This episode is brought to you by 6XD Gearbox. More on them later. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Minnoxide podcast. I'm your host, Harris, aka Minnoxide, man of many automotive aspirations. And today's my last stop for the California trip. So I'm here at Church Automotive Testing. So a little background, I actually got introduced to you via Andre from High Performance Academy. Right. So I was talking about this in the last episode. It's kind of funny how a Minnesota guy messages a New Zealand guy for people to talk to in California.
It's the world we live in, right?
Yeah, right. But go ahead, tell people a little bit about what it is you do, where you've come from, and then we'll kind of get into the specifics after that.
Sure, absolutely. So we're a dyno tuning business. We don't sell any parts. We don't do installs. We don't build engines. We just tune cars, on the dyno, sometimes in street tuning. Most of it here, sometimes remotely. Sometimes we'll even travel a little bit or go to the track. We do carburetors still, but most of our work, 90% of it or more, is all electronic, usually, either factory or standalone ECUs. And we just do that 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and have been doing it now for over 24 years.
It's rare to find anybody that does carburetor stuff at all anymore. Is it pretty rare out here as well? I know in Minnesota it's not
It's rare, yeah. Most of the guys doing it are going to be cars like this, although this one is converted over to a Holly Sniper now. But
of course,
or like we had a guy come through the other day with a blow-through carburetor setup with a centrifugal blower. But yeah, it's rare just because even for guys who still want the look, you can get a 4150 Holly Sniper, replacement that looks just like a 4150 CARB, but get all the benefits of fuel injection. So in most cases now, it's either you're racing in a particular class or you've just had the car for a long time and you want to keep running it that way. And look, carburetors still make plenty of power. It's just they're not the greatest to drive on the street.
I'm just going to adjust something real quick. Sure. So, okay, we'll go back to when this business started then. So what year did you officially get into this?
So I started the business in 2002.
Okay, so what was the split? Because like EFI was getting more prominent at that point. Was that where the business was, or is it still carbureted stuff?
It was EFI, yeah. And because I was in a different place then. So I actually started tuning my own cars in 99, 2000, and then started tuning a few other people's cars in 2001, and then decided to start the business in 2002. But at that point, I was a Honda guy.
Okay.
I mean, I had a Civic, a CRX, SI, GSR. I bought an S2000. In fact, sitting right over there. March of 2000, I bought one of the original ones. Still got it. And I was just dedicated Honda. I was a member of one of the founding members of Temple of VTech, which was one of the biggest Honda websites at the time. We were getting press cars from Honda. It was a great time to be a Honda guy. And I'm out here in Southern California, so it was perfect. And so, yeah, at the time when I started the business, I was tuning almost exclusively Hondas. I mean, probably 90% at that point, race cars, street cars, whatever. I also knew the guys from Hondata. So I had actually met Doug before he even moved to this country from New Zealand.
Okay.
So my world was Honda at that point. So I had just sold, I did not start out as a car guy, right? So I have a bachelor's in electrical engineering. I've got an MBA. I worked for Intel in my younger years, semiconductor labs and fabs. So, and then I went back to school to get my MBA and then started up an internet company in the 90s. And we had just sold that in 1999.
Okay.
So I was kicking around with a nice chunk of change in my bank account and wasn't sure what to do. So I was doing some teaching, I was doing some consulting, and I knew a lot of car guys who didn't have dynos, shops who didn't have dynos. I said, you know what? I don't have a good place to keep my race car. I was living by the beach. I had a one-car garage. Like, if I rented a little shop, bought a dyno, put it in there, I could make a little money, have a place to work on my car, and be involved in this industry that I really love. So I was looking at a DynoJet 248C, and if you wanted to put one of those into a rental facility, you had to get permission from the owner to dig a 6-foot deep pit through the foundation. Most places did not want to let you do that. And with California building laws, it's a pain to do anyways. So Doug from Hondata said, hey, why don't you consider a Dynapack? I said, what's a Dynapack? Never even heard of it. At that point, there were two in California. Lexus had one for NVH testing, and Road Race Engineering had one for doing DSMs. We drove to Fresno to Dynapack USA's offices, did some testing on their model unit up there. I said, okay, this will work. It's a little more expensive, but no holes to dig. You push them out of the way, got plenty of room for other stuff. And I rented a 1,500 square foot shop. So basically one of my garage bays here,
right.
2-wheel drive dyno, only the 500 horsepower model, and started tuning. 1 or 2 days a week, I rented out the shop to some shops for their own tuning purposes, and it just kept growing and growing and growing. 2005, we bought a second dyno, moved here, and it took off from there. I stopped doing anything else and was just focused on tuning cars at that point.
When you moved here, did you get the whole place, or was it like you bought a stall each year sort of deal?
No, I rented the whole place. I knew I couldn't use it all, so I rented out some extra space to a friend. And I still don't need all the space, so I rent out that corner to
really?
a friend of mine who does LS and LT stuff. Yeah, but yeah, it just kind of grew and grew to the point. Actually, we have these 2 dynos here. I've got a third dyno, which I rent out to somebody else, and then we have a mainline Pro Hub being delivered next month.
Nice. Okay.
So we'll have a third dyno here again. So I've got a lot of money in dynos over the years, but it's just a useful tool, and they make the money back really fast if you're using them correctly. So it's worth getting.
Do you still have that original dyno?
Yeah, absolutely. I still have we changed hardware and software on a lot of stuff, but I still have the original dyno cabinet stuck in one of our offices. Yeah. And, it's crazy because back then a Honda making 400 horsepower was very rare. So we could pretty much do any Honda that came through the door. And then I started to get guys with R32s and R33s, started to push up the power a little bit. And it's like, I need something more, and I need all-wheel drive. So, we bought the second dyno so we could do all-wheel drive stuff primarily.
Was that Dynapack as well?
That was also Dynapack. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I bought 3 Dynapacks over the years.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
What made you pull the trigger on finally going with a mainline?
Honestly, it was Dynapack's lack of progress. I have nothing but positive things to say about my experience with Dynapack. They've been great to me over the years. Scott Lampkin here at Dynapack USA has always been super supportive of us. Whatever we need parts-wise, anything else, the dynos have been reliable. The tech support out of New Zealand's been great. But when we bought our all-wheel drive setup in 2005, that dyno, the big hubs at the rear would handle 1,500 horsepower. The fronts would handle 500 to 600 horsepower. And they have really done nothing to increase power capacity since then. Now, back in 2005, the number of 1,000 horsepower cars I'd see in a year would be 1 or 2. So it wasn't like we were pushing the dynos that hard. Nowadays, it's several a week.
Yeah.
They're making over 1,000 horsepower. And if the gearing, these are torque limited. So if the gearing's not quite right, you may not be able to rev the car all the way out, or you may be over torquing the dyno if you give it full throttle, as boost comes in. So it's an issue. And I don't have any other complaints other than I just can't do some of the cars I want to do. And so mainline has the Pro Hub. The prices are very reasonable. I went and used a Pro Hub for a 1,200 horsepower Camaro. It's actually sitting over there at another shop. And they were kind enough to let us rent the dyno and try it out. And I said, you know what? This is so easy. I need to get one of these at this point. So, and they made the purchase process really easy. It's kind of funny because mainline it's hard to get equipment financing these days, especially on products from other countries. But EFI University out of Arizona actually helps do the financing.
Oh, no way.
Sort of stuff. Yeah. So they actually help underwrite the financing for these things so that they can get this stuff. And mainline is just cranking these things out. I mean, like 4 or 5, 6 dynos a week. Yeah. And so obviously it works. It's popular. It works. And you can do a lot of things with it that you can't do in the Dynapack. I waited years and I talked to the Dynapack. I said, can you guys do something more? Can you give me more power handling capacity? I don't even need 3,000, which is what the mainline has. Give me 2,000. I said, well, we did a prototype a number of years ago. It's twice as big. It'll handle 2,500 horsepower. It's also going to cost twice as much. I'm like, that's mainline's offering me 3,000 horsepower for the price of your 1,500 horsepower. So,
yeah.
And so it's disappointing in some ways because, like I said, I had no reason to change other than that the market has moved on and Dynapack didn't.
Well, the market's completely changed. Even if you look in the last decade, I mean, I imagine 1,000 horsepower cars are even more than they were a decade ago.
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you buy a Coyote, LS or LT, right, or even a Hemi these days, 1,000 horsepower is child's play. Even on a completely stock motor. Yeah, you don't want to be pushing your Coyote or your LT over 1,000, on stock blocks for long. But if you're careful about it and you're using it for, just drag race or something like that, that motor will last. I mean, I remember we did a Z06, C7 Z06 a number of years ago, about 970 on the stock motor, just 2650 blower, flex fuel, all that. And that guy he was street racing the thing for years and had no issues. It lasted a long time. So done right, any of those motors will handle it. Now, if you want to be beating on it and making 1,200 horsepower for a long time, you should build the motor at that point. Right. But yeah, what you're getting from the factory is huge. And then even now when you're getting into the BMW stuff, I mean, we're seeing B58s at 900 wheel horsepower on stock motors, junkyard blocks.
On stock motors?
A junkyard block. Yeah. One of my employees has an M240i and he really wanted to see how far he could push. He's already built another motor for it, but he's been cranking up the stock motor. And
just see where it goes.
Yeah. And right now he's about 870, 880 Been to the drag strip. We've broken the drive shafts a few times at the drag strips. Now he's upgraded that. He's been launching the car every day out in the parking lot for the last month to see.
I've seen
breaks.
those videos. Yeah. They're great.
So just he wants to see if it's going to break or not. And so far it hasn't. And and he drives it every day too. So, and the S58, of course, makes, it's completely stock turbos, everything, just E50, you're making 750. So the market is totally different now. And in some ways, more power sounds great. But in reality, if you're driving a Hellcat or a Coyote or any, LT4 or even an LSA, LS9 car on the street, 1,000 horsepower is almost unusable for daily driving. My Cadillac is just under 1,000 right now. And in the right conditions, it's super fast. But driving every day, I've got to pedal it all the time. I even take power out in first gear to make it easier to hook up. And I kind of like the car better at 800 horsepower than at 1,000. But being in this business, if I'm not pushing the numbers up, pushing the limits, I have to show what we can do, right? So I think a lot of guys get too wrapped up in the power number versus the delivery and the usability. But then again, you just go all-wheel drive. You do a track hawk or you do a S58 or a B58 car, and then traction's really not an issue at that point.
That is also, I haven't seen too many track hawk. I've seen a lot of X-Drive S58, G80s losing it. It's just, it's a little too confidence inspiring.
Well, and I think also the people getting into them don't have a lot of experience. You get a guy that went from, the market we see is a lot of the guys that used to run like maybe VQs are now moving up into B58s.
That is the natural progression, isn't it?
Right, yeah. And so, you got a 300 wheel horsepower, 400 wheel horsepower VQ, even rear wheel drive, not that bad. And the VQ chassis, that FM chassis is really, really stable, right? It doesn't tend to get too funky on you. You upgrade to 750, 800 horsepower now, and especially if things break loose and you turned off all your traction management, it's a whole different world, right? Mm-hmm. And that car keeps pulling too. So yeah. And of course there's always all the Mustang memes, right? But that's just people being dumb in most cases. But you can't, when you start getting up to that 800, 900,000 horsepower range, you can't just flat foot it anymore. Mm-hmm. Even in third gear on the freeway, if you hit something where there's a little traction issue, then that car is going to step out. If
you do flat foot it, you have to know what you're doing, right? Like you have to be well aware that you're riding the lightning, whatever. Yeah. Okay. Actually, one thing you mentioned there is the VQ platforms, or no, sorry, the VR30, which is like, that's the next progression.
Yeah, so VQ 35, 37, then now the VR30. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I saw something on your Instagram when I was going through it, just preparing for this. Do you think the VR30 gets a lot of hate for no reason?
Yeah. It's kind of funny too. When we did that comparison, VR30 versus B58, everybody hated it. The B58 guys didn't like us for talking about good things about the VR30, and the VR30 guys thought we hyped the B58 too much. So I guess it was probably a good content then. Sure. Everybody was involved. But yeah, the VR30, I think, look, the engine management on it isn't as good as the B58. So closed loop feedback and then the knock control isn't as good as what you get on the B58 stuff. So it's easier to extract the power out of the BMW motors. But once you understand what the VR30 needs, it's got plenty of power capacity and also what it doesn't need, which is you don't want to bring the torque in real hard down low. It's not hard to take a stock turbo VR30 on some ethanol and pump out 600 pound-feet of torque at 2,500 to 3,000 RPM. But unless it's a manual car, which would only be a Z, you're not going to ever use that. Automatically in a downshift. But if you do happen to leave it in high gear and load it up down there and make that kind of torque, you've got a chance of bending some rods. And you're also going to saturate the intercooler system and everything else like that. So it's better just to bring it in soft and kind of ramp the torque up. And you'll see that now. There are guys making 700, 750, 800 wheel horsepower on stock block VR30s now. And they do it with obviously bigger turbos, which helps soften the hit down low. And they're also not aggressively trying to push that torque curve up. You just need to keep the torque where you want it between 5 and 7, and you're going to be fast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like what opened my eyes to that platform is AMS seems to be like one of the very few players that's actually doing anything for that platform. Yeah,
AMS has always really embraced the Nissan market, starting with the VR38, obviously, and the GTR, but and they do their research. They really do their homework on stuff, and they'll start out by pushing, high limits. They'll throw whatever money they have to at it, and then they'll work back down to, more affordable builds. So I got a lot of respect for those guys, and they've been doing it for a long time now.
Yeah.
And the VR30, it's also a lot cheaper platform, right? So the Q50s, which would be where most of the cars that we'd see on VRs. I've only seen like one new Z on the road out here, which is nuts. They're so rare.
Even out here, huh?
Even out here. Well, probably especially out here because cost of living and everything else. But now with the price drop, they seem to be selling a lot more. So maybe we'll see more. But because the Q50s were so prevalent in the rental car market, and this is a problem Infiniti has in general, you get used ones really, really cheap. I mean, you could pick up a, 2016, 2017 Q50 all-wheel drive with 50,000 miles on it for like 20 grand. I mean, it's nuts, and the parts are relatively cheap, and it's not as easy to work on, in my opinion, as a B58, just the V6 versus the inline six. There's more stuff to mess with. Trying to get to the turbos is harder. The intercooler setup isn't as good. But, if you want to start out with a much cheaper car and then work your way up, it's great.
Okay. So what's the best bang for buck? 600 horsepower.
600 horsepower. I mean, we're talking about used cars and new cars. Used. Get
them rental returns.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'd probably try and pick up like maybe a 15 Mustang and slap a supercharger on it.
Okay.
I mean, it's so easy to make the power, and at 600, 700 horsepower, that Coyote will last forever. And you can get them in manuals if you want. You're not going to get the 10 speed, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The 10 speeds don't like super high power unless you tune them very carefully. And even then you might have to upgrade them, but that's a good value. I think it's also more daily drivable than a lot of the other cars. You could do an older B58. My employee, when he bought his M240i, I think he got it was a 16 for like 18, 19 grand.
What's that, Gen 1 B58?
Yeah, that's Gen 1. And that's X-Drive, 8 HP. But at that 800 horsepower level, got to do a tranny upgrade, right? Turbo upgrade, everything else like that. So, but yeah, and that's the thing too, is with a B58, you can't get to 600 on the stock turbo. So you're going to have to spend money on a turbo at that point. Yeah, it's kind of funny I say Mustang too, because I'm not a Mustang guy.
Right.
But you could also do a Camaro, but if you're looking at anything LT, it gets more expensive. You're starting to spend a lot more money. It's a better motor. But once you start getting up to higher horsepower levels too, the direct injection setup, you got either add port injection or spend a ton of money on more DI stuff. And that's cost prohibitive, right? You're spending $6-7 grand on fuel systems at that point.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you want to run the 85. So, what else would be a good one for bang for the buck? I can't say any front wheel drive cars. As much as I love the K20s and the Integras and the Civics, you start pushing at the power levels, it's no fun, with the front wheel drive. Who else would be a good one? I love RS3s, but they're so rare, and 600 horsepower on that might be a little bit more expensive.
Oh, compared to a Mustang, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cool car. It's a unique car as well. I mean, it sounds different, looks different.
Yeah, it's a baby R8.
Yeah. So yeah, it's probably going to be a Mustang or a B58 car. That'd be your best bang for the buck in that 600 horsepower range.
What about 1,000?
1,000 horsepower. Wow. Okay. So,
because I imagine everything changes at that point.
Yeah, because everything has to be upgraded.
When you get to a certain level in a build, whether it be drag racing or drifting, road course, or just a badass street car, you'll have to upgrade your transmission. And when we're talking sequential transmissions, there's no one on the planet with a stronger gearbox than 6XD. And the proof is in the pudding here, folks. Half the FD field is rocking a 6XD, and even 3,000 horsepower Vipers have not been able to tame the best that 6XD has to offer. So if you're ready to take it up a notch, go to 6xdgearbox.com, and when contacting them to place an order, use code Minnoxide5, or reach out via socials to figure out how one of the baddest transmissions on the planet could fit in your build. Let's get back to the show.
If you're willing to roll the dice a little bit, I think you pick yourself up a Gen 3 Coyote F-150.
Okay.
You probably
get those pretty cheap now, too.
Very cheap. You can use the power. The 10 speed is going to be a little unhappy at that power level. You have to upgrade it. But 1,000 horsepower is not hard to do on the 85 out of those. I mean, we just did a 2026, so a Gen 4, and Whipple kit, 13 PSI, long tubes, and E85, like 850 at the wheels. And I mean, he bought the truck new for 48 grand. So he's probably into that thing 60, 65, and he's got a thing that's a car that's going to run 9s all day long, if not faster. So there's that value there. I like, my LT stuff, like Z01s, like C7s, Z06s, but price-wise, they're really expensive. And to get to 1,000 horsepower, you got to do the fuel system again. So it adds up. I think, that's probably one of the determining factors is how easily can you add fuel to these cars to get that power. B58 port injection setup's relatively cheap to do, whereas for the LT stuff, you're going to spend $4 or $5,000 probably to get it all done right. Something like a DSX Atlas system or something like that. Whereas with the B58s, it's easily integrated with the factory ECU, and it's just manifold and some injectors, and you're pretty good to go. Whereas with the Coyote stuff, either you're on port injection already on the Gen 2s, or you still have port injection on the Gen 3 despite adding DI. DI is one of those things where it offers a lot of advantages, but at some point it becomes cost prohibitive.
There's a ceiling.
If you want to stick with it. Yeah. I always thought about trading in my CTSV for a Gen 3 or even a CT5, but I just don't want to deal with the DI expense. To get where I'm at on a LT4, I'd have to spend so much additional money just to get back to where I'm at right now. And it's like, with more expensive car, it's just not for me. Plus I like manuals.
That's fair.
So my Visa manual, the Gen 3 didn't come with a manual.
The Blackwings have a manual.
The Blackwing does, yeah. So that one back there is a manual, and that's great. But that, on the other hand, if you're running 1,000 horsepower, manual's not going to be the fastest way to go either.
Yeah.
So you'd rather have the 10-speed. But yeah, it's a tough situation, and it's a question we get a lot. So adding port injection to DI cars, obviously every B58 guy is considering it. The S58 guys have to think about it if they're going to go big power. Any LT guy has to think about it if they're boosted and want to run the 85. And those are three big markets for us. And now even the FA20 and 24 guys now are talking about, they put a BRZ manifold on a WRX.
Okay.
Try and make that work, which it can be done. It's a little bit expensive. And there are DI solutions as well, but it adds up. It adds up real fast. You're basically having to add a whole nother fuel system onto the car and then make sure you have the control logic for it as well. So that's where I'm not a big fan of the BRZ from a big power perspective. That for me is more of a fun handling car. Yeah. Call it a step up from a Miata maybe power wise. And I love the new FA24 engine, but if I was going to have to build a high powered FA24 or FA20, I'd rather do it in a BRZ than in a WRX.
What's a high powered FA24?
500.
500? Okay.
500, 600. Yeah. I mean, we've done some in that range, but most guys are happy with 400 or less. Just that's the nature of the vehicle. But doing it on a BRZ is so much easier because we already have port injection and it's already part of the factory ECU. So controlling it's really, really easy. Whereas doing it on a WRX, even though I'd rather have the all-wheel drive system for traction, it becomes a lot harder to do. So, and you can always now, you can go out and source DI stuff for that, but DI injectors and DI fuel pumps are never cheap.
No.
I mean, you go a top quality company like XDI, Nostrum, any of those guys, you spend a lot of dollars. And there's a reason for that. I mean, direct injectors have to be calibrated so much more precisely than port injectors because their injection times are a lot shorter, and it's expensive to do.
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to tour Nostrum a couple of years ago now, and it's like everything that goes behind the scenes into making a DI injector it's insane. I think it was they're injecting at 300 bar or something like that. Yeah,
so we always tell people 3,000 to 5,000 PSI is where you're at, and bar doesn't resonate with a lot of people, but yeah, and 5,000 PSI, which I think is what the M5s and the S58s are on as well. Yeah, that's a massive amount of pressure, and these injectors they have a lot of spray capacity. So an LT4 injector, I think is 170 or 220 pounds per minute. I always look at it in grams per second on the calibration, but whereas the injectors on my Cadillac are 1,200 cc's, right? Or 120 pounds. So the factory injectors on an LT4 are 50% bigger than what I have on my 1,000 horsepower Cadillac. But because we don't have much time to inject, you don't get nearly as much fuel availability. And so, yeah, it's a catch-22. It's direct injection offers so many advantages. I don't know if you saw that BTR recently did a comparison test where they did direct injection versus port injection.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
And they brought in somebody who thought, oh no, port injection, a tuner who thought port injection was going to be better. And no matter what he did, he couldn't get within 30 horsepower of the DI motor on an NA motor. And so it is provably better in almost every circumstance until you run into fuel delivery issues. And then at that point, it's just, you can't go big enough. So, and at that point too, if you're looking to make 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 horsepower, finding an extra 50 or 100 on DI might be nice, but it's just easier just to add a little boost to make up for it and go from there.
That is a good point. Where's the DI ceiling? What in the next 10 years, are we going to be able to see higher horsepower to DI cars like that?
So if you look at where diesel's at in terms of injection pressures, they are 3 to 4 times higher in some cases on injection pressure. So technically we could potentially get a lot more fuel capacity out, but I don't know that we'll ever see that, especially on ethanol fuels, at least without additives. I'm not a metallurgy guy, but one of the problems with DI systems, you look at the early early N54 stuff, and I think some of the early VW and Mazda stuff as well on DI, they had problems with high pressure pumps going out. And I think a lot of that was lubricity of gasoline versus diesel.
Oh yeah.
Diesel's a lot more oily, right? So that dry fuel is a problem, and ethanol is even drier than gasoline. So if you don't add some sort of lubricant there, I don't know, maybe it just doesn't work for those high pressure systems. I think they can eventually find a way, but will they? I don't know. I mean, unless ethanol gets pushed more into the mainstream, in terms of flex fuel on DI cars, and manufacturers want to start adding more capacity for that, I don't think they'll have the need to go a whole lot higher than where they're at right now. And it's kind of funny too, because ethanol was much bigger around the rest of the country for a number of years. And then just as California began to adopt ethanol, a lot of the rest of the country started to, you'd see it go away. Like Vegas, where we used to have a second facility, used to have like 15 and 20 ethanol stations, which for a small town like Vegas is pretty good. And then over the years, we were up there from 2011 through 2020. Over the years, it went down. There's only like 3 or 4 left, which was funny. Whereas California went from, when I first started running ethanol on my Cadillac in 2014, I used to have to drive, I had flex fuel. I had switchable maps actually back then, not actual true flex fuel. I had to drive 30 miles to fill up a bunch of drums with ethanol so I could have it here locally. Nowadays, there are hundreds of ethanol stations within the greater Los Angeles area. And in fact, you can drive from LA to Vegas, to Phoenix, to San Francisco, to San Diego. And I don't care how poor your fuel economy is on ethanol, you'll be able to find an ethanol station along the way to keep filling up. So it's awesome.
Interesting.
And it's also really cheap. I'm pretty sure, I've never looked into the numbers, but I'm pretty sure that California subsidizes ethanol either by not taxing it as much or maybe even offering some subsidies, because the difference between ethanol and gasoline in the rest of the country is much smaller than it is here. So we filled up yesterday for, I think, $2.50 a gallon on ethanol. Premium gas at the same station was $5.50. So it's a no-brainer out here. And in fact, during this whole recent gas price surge with the whole Persian Gulf thing going on, some California politicians were proposing that they incentivize or legalize flex fuel for anybody who wanted to run it. Because, well, a lot of pressure, people complaining about $7, $8 gas.
Right.
That's kind of fallen off, I think, as gas prices have dropped. But, if California was really serious about reducing transportation emissions, they would do everything they could to get people into E85.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. I don't think they're really that concerned about it. They're more concerned about taxation and social management. But, back in the day when we first started running ethanol, emissions out here was done on an emissions dyno. So every 2 years you had to roll in, they put you on emissions dyno, and I think test you at 1,500 RPM and 2,500 RPM, steady state, certain load. And they measure your tailpipe emissions. And we were able to get cars, doing testing at various smog dynos. We were able to get cars to pass the California emission standards with no catalytic converter on E85. That's how clean this stuff burns. This is not just an estimate. It's measuring the actual tailpipe emissions. You got to be careful about your nitrogen, your NOx emissions, your oxides of nitrogen. But other than that, I mean, the carbon monoxide, the CO2, everything, it's so much lower with an oxygenated fuel. And everything burns cleaner too. I mean, your exhaust gas temps are lower. The piston tops are cleaner when you get done. I'm a huge proponent of ethanol. And that's one of the reasons why we were trying to get an ethanol E85 flex fuel kit legalized through CARB out here. But it's just too difficult to do. But if you had everybody in this state running on ethanol, you would reduce motor emissions by probably on the order of 20-25%. It's just that good. And motors are going to last longer in terms of, people try and run their cars, trying to save gas. They'll run it on 89 instead of 91, even 87 in some cases if they have a choice. And even our 91 out here is horrible. I would argue that it's probably the worst gasoline in the country. And I say that because our additive package out here is unique to what they call ACN 91, so Arizona, California, Nevada. All use the same formulation. And that formulation is knock prone, very poor tolerance for heat, just not good. So the joke out here is we call it 91 Noctane.
Oh, okay.
It's just horrible gasoline. And
Is there a reason that it has the additive pack in there that it does?
Yeah, California emissions laws. They basically demanded a reformulated gasoline that would lower, I think, both evaporative emissions and smog emissions.
Okay.
And maybe it does, but it hurts on terms of performance.
I always look at stuff like that. It's like, all right, cool. Like you lowered the emissions, but now you have a blown up engine. What's the emissions in making a new engine?
Yeah. So there was an interesting test years ago where GM had, they may still have it, a 1.4 liter turbo.
Yeah.
And they put it in the Chevy Cruze and a few other things. And it was a decent little engine, but it did not like 87 octane. It was rated to run on 87 octane, but when you ran on an 87 octane in hot weather conditions, it would knock, pull timing, lose a bunch of power. And you would actually return lower fuel economy on 87 because of all the timing loss and the power loss than you would running 91. So you didn't really save any money.
But the average Joe wouldn't know that, right?
Wouldn't they just say, 87 is cheaper, right? And not only that, but you were risking hurting your engine more. And knock events are not clean either. Knock events are abnormal combustion. They do all kinds of weird things. That's why if you see a car running full throttle, you get that gray puff out of the tailpipe. That's a knock event. It's you're actually polluting more when you get those knock events too. So, and you get misfires. So there's this perverse incentive, where legislators, rule makers, bureaucrats will focus on one particular thing and they'll never think about the follow-on effects. There's no free lunch, right? And ethanol certainly has benefited from federal government subsidies. And like I said, probably state subsidies here in California. So it's not fair to say that ethanol is always going to be that much cheaper than gasoline. It will be cheaper, but it does benefit from subsidies. So it's not a true comparison. But in terms of how clean it is and how much power you can make on it, I love the stuff. I love the stuff. I've actually thought about calling, there's a couple companies out here, Propel Fuels and Pearson Fuels, that have most of the ethanol stations in California, or ethanol pumps. They'll put pumps at various stations. And I thought about calling those guys up and saying, you know what, you guys need a better marketing campaign because you need to educate people about how good this stuff really is. Yes, people are going to get worse gas mileage, 100%, but the cost per mile is going to be lower than on gasoline.
The mileage thing is also like, you have to realize how many people are adopting electric cars with lower ranges anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you get 200, like the same people that are pro EV probably be pro ethanol if they're advertised to correctly, like you're saying.
Yeah, if you educate them and let them know what's going on. And that's the thing too, is look, you don't always have to run it. If you have flex fuel, you can put in gasoline when you need to as well. If you're
That's
taking
what
a long
I mentioned earlier. I feel like I'm not seeing as many flex fuel cars from the factory anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ford was one of the earlier adopters of flex fuel, but they decided to stick with what they call virtual flex fuel. So Ford doesn't actually put ethanol sensors in most of their vehicles that have flex fuel logic in them. They use an inferred ethanol percentage. GM's done it too on one or two, but they look at the long-term fuel trims and then say, oh, well, if you're consistently running 15% lean, then you must be on E40, right? If you're 30% lean, you must be on E60. And they'll adopt that. That's not a big deal for a lot of the Ford stuff because anything that's running that these days has full-time closed loop wideband fuel control. So even if the trims are off a little bit, it's always going to be right at the right mixture. And Ford is not really aggressive with running more ignition timing on ethanol. So even if they're off on the ethanol content, they're not trying to cram a bunch of timing in and make more power. Now, if you're doing custom tuning on that, say you're doing a Coyote and you're enabling flex fuel, you got to be careful. If it's a naturally aspirated car, you're not adding that much timing. Knock control is pretty good. But like, we'd never want to run inferred flex fuel on a boosted car.
Right.
It's just too dangerous if something happens. Whereas GM gives you a nice flex fuel sensor on most of their stuff. But they really don't offer, I don't think, anything anymore with the flex fuel sensor. But that flex fuel sensor, it's almost always a Continental sensor. Very well understood. That's what everybody uses for the aftermarket kits. And it's cheap. I think wholesale, it's like, you probably get it for $50.
Okay.
And it's super simple to do. It's literally on the GM cars. It's a power wire, a ground wire, and one wire to the ECU. And then you click a toggle in the ECU and set up your flex fuel tables and you're good to go. So, and that logic is still in all GM ECUs now. I mean, even the Blackwings, for example, they have flex fuel logic in there. It's not enabled from the factory and it requires an operating system adjustment to make work, but it works. It's all there. And so you're not having to kind of Band-Aid things. It literally has a timing table for flex fuel, has a different power enrichment table for flex fuel, has your blend tables already in there. So it's easy to do. And I think maybe GM still has a belief that maybe it's going to be something they want. And so they keep the ability in their vehicles. But yeah, they're really not using it right now. And I don't like government incentives for stuff. I don't want government to tell me what I can or can't do, when it comes to my vehicles. But maybe they're waiting for some more government incentive to push ethanol again. I don't know. But the education's not out there. There's a lot of people that believe that ethanol is worse for the environment than gasoline. And you say, well, why do you think that? Well, it has nothing to do with how the ethanol burns. It's how you make it.
Right.
Making ethanol from corn, which is where we get our ethanol from, is inefficient and causes more pollution than it prevents. If we're going to do it, we should use, sugar like Brazil does. Brazil is almost entirely on ethanol, and it's all made from sugarcane.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So they have the ability to pump some gas during colder seasons because ethanol is not good for cold start. But Brazil's a relatively warm country. Obviously in Minnesota, you don't want to pump ethanol 6 months out of the year. It's still too cold for startup. But even using corn, and this is kind of one of my pet topics because I really get irritated when people start talking about ethanol and don't know what's going on. University of Indiana has done a lot of studies on energy inputs into farming, right? Because people want to know, hey, farming consumes resources, it generates resources. What's the balance? And they looked at what does it cost to cultivate an acre of corn, right? Uh-oh. So in terms of fuel, right? So they looked at planting, preparation, fertilizing, everything else like that. They figured that depending upon where you're at and what methods you use, it's between 25 and 50 gallons of diesel fuel to plant, cultivate, and then harvest an acre of corn.
Okay.
All right. And out of that acre of corn, currently the average yields would end up with about 400 gallons of ethanol from that. So you could actually produce maybe 500 gallons of E85, right? When you add the gasoline in. So you're inputting, worst case scenario, let's say 50 gallons of diesel, you're getting out 400 gallons of ethanol. Now, even though diesel has maybe twice the energy content of ethanol, it's still a net gain of about 400% in terms of energy. And that's coming from the sun. And then they said, well, but the planting releases a bunch of carbon dioxide, so it's a net negative. And there was a study done by University of Wisconsin a couple years ago, and some actually relatively influential car channels and stuff picked up on it and just parroted the stuff without checking it. And they said, yeah, by tilling the land and plowing the land to replant the corn, you're going to release more carbon dioxide than you're taking in. So that doesn't really make much sense. And then I started looking into it more because I don't know anything about farming. And it turns out that corn farmers don't use plowing and tilling. They literally harvest the corn, and then when they go back and plant it, they plant it right through the leftover stuff in the field. So there's no tilling of the earth, nothing like that. So the entire argument of this paper was completely moot because they don't do it that way. And not only that, but when you harvest all that corn, you literally take it to the ethanol plant, which is usually located right in the middle of farming country. They take the corn there along with all the silage, all the leftover stuff they don't need. They burn the silage to basically brew the ethanol. And then when it's done, you're left over with all this corn mash that all the sugar's been taken out of to create the ethanol. And that corn mash is actually a high protein cattle feed. It's actually better for cattle than just straight corn because cattle don't digest sugar real well. So you end up feeding the cattle anyways, which is what a lot of this field corn would have been grown for. You create ethanol out of it and you burn the waste as your energy. So it becomes really energy efficient, and you create a fuel that is produced locally. It makes more power, burns cleaner, and produces less pollution. So yeah, look, there are reasons not to run it. You don't want to put it into an older car. Anything pre-2000, the fuel lines aren't going to be right. The fuel tank may have stuff in it that's going to dissolve and cause problems. You shouldn't force people to run ethanol, but it should be an option, and it should be an encouraged option because it's great. And as car enthusiasts, we can actually get on board with the EPA and everybody else and go, yeah, let's all work towards this together. Mm-hmm. But there's not an incentive for that. And I don't know why it is. I don't pretend to understand the machinations of government and bureaucratic organizations, but it's a shame because ethanol, in my opinion, has been the single biggest driver of the horsepower increase we've seen over the last 10, 15 years in this country. Without ethanol, you'd either be doing expensive race gas tunes. I mean, race gas these days is, I don't think you can get anything for less than $10 a gallon, and the good stuff's 20 or more. You couldn't produce anything near the power we're producing on even a good 93 octane, today, and it's all due to ethanol.
It is crazy to think. I actually watched, funny enough, when I was in high school, Hank Green, I don't know if you ever heard of Hank Green, but he was we'd watch it on the projector or whatever. He recently did a video on I think it was AI data centers and how much water they use and whatever. And then he compared it to what we spend on agriculture, and it was like magnitudes more. And a lot of it was towards corn as well. But I don't know enough to be dangerous. Sounds like you had a couple evenings of just digging into this.
Yeah, a couple guys said some stuff online, and I don't like getting into online arguments, but it was just like, wow, this is just egregiously wrong. And look, the agriculture industry is not without sin, right? I mean, there's a lot of money that goes from the agricultural lobby to Congress and everybody else. They ask for special favors. We give a lot of money to farmers to not grow stuff, so I don't pretend to defend that. And I'm just saying, look, it'd be great if we could do sugarcane instead of corn. It's an even better way to do it. It's more efficient, but the net benefit is massive to us. And water used for agriculture technically, should be is being recycled into the environment anyways. I think there's issues with monoculture, and when you plant just one crop everywhere and keep doing it, you got to rotate crops, different stuff like that. But in terms of ethanol, though, especially before we began to do our fracking and increase our oil output here, ethanol was a great way to reduce our dependence upon oil sources that maybe aren't as friendly to us as we'd like them to be, right? So, and just purely from a car guy standpoint, though, who doesn't want to make more power and be safer about it, right? I mean, knock is not an issue for most people on ethanol.
Is there any reason I'm currently exploring the idea of taking my daily driver and modifying it a little further.
Yeah.
Because I did all the handling stuff and I'm enjoying it a lot. But now I'm like, all right, do I go E85? I've never done E85 on my own cars, right? Like, so I'm thinking about, do I want to do that for the GTI? Is there any reason not to do it?
If you can do it without having to invest a ton of money in a fuel system, there's no reason not to do it. Yeah.
I don't think it was egregious.
Yeah. Is your GTI one of the ones with port injection?
It's the new Mark A GTI. So
you should have direct import. Yeah. So it becomes very easy then at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. I was looking at the various, because there's a lot with any of these 4-banger platforms, they're all off the shelf, right? So I'm like comparing. And yesterday I was looking at in the car again and I'm like, I might have to I don't know. We'll see.
So there is on a boosted car, a factory boosted car, there is no better way to gain power than simply adding 85. And I think that's one of the great things about it is you don't have to worry about changing a lot of parts. You're just changing the fuel and you can improve everything about the way the car runs with the exception of fuel economy. So B58, for example, running completely stock. If you tune it up on 91 octane, 430, 440 horsepower to the wheels, max on our dyno, which isn't bad, right? It's a nice output. E50, which is the most you can run on that car, and you can run more ethanol, but you have to turn the boost down. But E50, 520 to 540 horsepower. So 100 horsepower gain, less knock, cleaner burning, cheaper per mile. I mean, to do that kind of gain anywhere else, you got to buy a turbo. You got to invest more money in it. It's super, super easy. Even cars where you can't turn up the boost. So like my Cadillac CTSV, when I first put ethanol in that car, because the intercoolers on those weren't that great, so it's hard to run 91 with a lot of timing for charge temp reasons. I gained like 80 or 90 horsepower on ethanol. And once you drive it like that, you can't go back.
Right.
I mean, it's like if you have to put 91 in it, you're going to be like checking your phone. Is there an E85 station within range? How far can I get? Can I put a gallon of 91 in to get me to the next ethanol station so I don't have to run too much 91? And you feel like you're mistreating the car when you put 91 in it because it's so much slower. Yeah, it's nice to get better gas mileage, but if you like acceleration, you like power, I mean, it's a bit of a drug.
Yeah.
Acceleration is already the thrill that we're all looking for, whether it's lateral or longitudinal acceleration. You want to go on corners fast, you want to accelerate in a straight line fast, and ethanol just gives you more of it for less money. So,
what are your thoughts on the whole, we've been talking about B58s here a little bit. What are your thoughts on the whole, blending at the gas station thing?
So I don't like it. I don't like it when guys try and run blends on cars that don't actually have flex fuel sensors. If you have a flex fuel sensor, then it's okay because we can set it up where if you go too far, we're going to dial it back. So FA20s, for example, on the WRX, on the VA WRXs, they can't run full ethanol on the factory fuel system, right? You upgrade the in-tank pump for $100, you get yourself maybe to E50, E60 on a stock turbo car. And then after that, you've got to roll it off. But on our blending tables, we can say, okay, at 50% ethanol, I want to be at my maximum boost. But as my ethanol goes up, I'm going to roll myself back towards 91 boost so that I'm keeping things safe. And same thing with timing and everything else. So if someone does go a little bit over, they're still okay. And if they go way over, we just pull all the power out so they can fix it later on. If you're trying to blend, and a lot of guys would do this on the BMW stuff, they wouldn't actually want to do a flex fuel sensor. They just said, give me an E50 map. And then they'll put it in. And the assumption there is that, well, you've got good wide bands, you've got individual cylinder knock control. So even if you go to E55 or E60 or only E40, the car will protect you in that case, right? And we were talking about this before we started today. That's really how the e-tuning market got so big, is vehicles like the BMWs, vehicles like the Coyotes, right? One of the things that those very different platforms have in common is they have really good ECUs. And when I say good ECUs, I mean they have very good timing control. They have good knock sensors, well-calibrated knock sensors that you can really trust. And they have closed-loop wideband fuel control that's very accurate. BMW is a little bit better than Ford in that they do better individual cylinder control. But overall, both those cars, you can mess up the tune to some extent, and the car will protect you. So if you're a good tuner, and we talked about, for example, like Lund, for example, or in the BMW space, one of the guys that I always keep track of is Mike Body. You know, he's out there making cars go really fast, a lot of BMW platforms. And both those companies do a ton of e-tuning. I don't know how much, but I'm pretty sure it's more in a year than we do. You know, we tune a lot of cars. And they're able to do that, though, because they're working on platforms that give them really good feedback. And so if this platform will protect somebody from a bad tuner, then imagine what a good tuner can do with it, right? And that's what it comes down to. Whereas if you're trying to remote tune any pre-global BGM car, right? No wide bands, still narrow bands in all those cars, right? Hellcats at least get a wide band, so that helps a little bit. I'm not a fan of Dodge's knock control regime, but if you're on E85, not a big deal. Prior to the turbo Hondas, no wide bands, or not that great a wide band on some of the K series stuff. So it all depends on what you're trying to tune. Early Subarus, also EJs, right? Wideband, but it didn't really read anything accurately below 12:1. So you couldn't really count on it at wide open throttle. When we went to the FA20s, then we got a decent wideband, a little bit more accurate at that point. So guys who are trying to e-tune older cars, a company that I really respect is GPI for the GM stuff.
Yeah.
They will tell you if you've got an LS or an LT that you've got to get a wideband and wire it in before they'll even tune your car remotely, which is smart on their part, because otherwise you're just guessing, and you don't want to guess on a high output car.
Which is what's the cost on something like that anyway, just to add that?
So to add a wideband, I'm not sure how GPI is doing it when they ask people to put it on the GM car, if they're having somebody wire to their HP Tuner's dongle and then logging it through there. You can do that way. You can get an input for your HP Tuner's MPVI. So they're probably just doing it that way. So if you're going to get a typical wideband sensor, you're probably spending $300 or $400 for the setup, and then you've got to weld a bung in. And you can take out a secondary, but weld a bung in and wire it up. So you're going to get into for $500. But if you don't have a tuner nearby, we can go to the dyno or one that you trust. That $500 plus the $600 or $700, about $100 for the e-tune is not going to be that different than coming to us for a dyno tune, right? So the problem, though, of course, is if you're out there doing road testing, full throttle pulls in the road, you do it at the wrong time, wrong place, and you might get arrested.
Yeah.
So we always tell people, it's like, even if you're doing e-tuning with somebody like Lund or somebody like Body, and you're out here, it's like, we don't care. Come rent the dyno. Make a few passes in the dyno so you can get your data there, at least so you're not having to be out on the road doing something unsafe. And, and we've worked directly with some customers. I don't think anybody from Body's come in here, but Lund, we've had several customers with Mustangs come in and do runs in the dyno because, one guy actually told us that he got pulled over and got a big ticket while he was doing data logging on the street. So he said, I'm not going to do that anymore. But I think most guys still tend to do it on the street, which is not ideal, but we all speed, right? So can't blame them.
Earlier you mentioned, let me start. Earlier you mentioned DSX. So now you got the C8s unlocking a TCU. Do you think you're going to see a big influx of those customers?
No.
No?
And the reason is because of the cost.
Oh, okay.
So I like the C8 platform. I didn't buy one because early issues in the transmission scared me a little bit, and not being able to tune them was a problem. There were some aftermarket piggyback boxes to boost transmission pressures, but just wasn't what I was looking to do. And we were getting 700-800 horsepower out of turbocharged models, and if you're careful with the torque model in the ECM, then it at least report correct torque values to the transmission, so you get decent pressures. But I mean, I had some Z06 guys that completely stock were having transmission issues, and GM was trying to void their warranties because they missed a transmission filter change by a couple hundred miles. So it's like, I don't want to get involved in that at this point. But now that you can tune the TCM, yeah, it should be a lot safer, big power stuff, a lot easier to do, but the cost is high. So I haven't seen a ZR1 in the dyno yet. I've done a lot of Z06s, a lot of Z51 Stingrays, whatever. And for the NA cars, if you're not going to go ahead and do a cam swap on the LT, not running, new intake manifold, everything else like that, you're looking at maybe 30 to 50 horsepower gains with some bolt-ons, maybe flex fuel. But the cost now, in the old days, most GM stuff from HP tuners would cost us $100 to $200 in credits. So that was our overhead to tune the car. With the Global B stuff, because the ECU has to be unlocked, you have to take the ECU out, got to send it to Illinois, to HP tuners, get it unlocked, got to ship it back, reinstall it, and then license credits to tune it. The C8 unlock is $1,500. All right. Shipping typically with insurance back and forth, especially if you're trying to do it next day or 2 day, because customer doesn't want to let the car sit, $400 from here. Install. Some C8s have the ECU and what would be the transmission tunnel if it was a front engine car. That's actually easier to get to in some ways because it's just a bunch of bolts. You pull it out, you're good to go. But of course, the car doesn't move then at that point. Others have the ECU underneath the rear bumper, which is okay if you can get the bumper off without disconnecting any of the parking sensors. Otherwise, you might have to recalibrate stuff. So you're going to have a few $100 labor there. So unlock, shipping, insurance, and R&R, you're already up to about $2,200, something like that. Well, yeah, $2,200. And then you got to spend money on credits. And for just the ECM, it's $400 for credits. So now we're getting close to $3,000 now before we ever touch a key to tune the car. So if we're charging $1,000 for a tune, now you're looking at $4,000 to get 30 or 40 horsepower. At that point, you might just save your money up and get the turbo kit if you're going to do it anyways. Right. So now a ZR1, whole different story, because now you're just turning a boost in the factory.
And you already got $250,000 in the car anyway. And
it's not a big deal, but ZR1s are not going to be that common. So, Z06s, similar issue. I mean, they love ethanol. They will make more power on that, but then you've also got to buy a flex fuel kit. And the only guy I'm going to buy a flex fuel kit for those cars is from DSX. At this point, they're the ones that will go in and enable things properly and set it all up. So, but that's another, $600-700, whatever that's going for these days. So it adds up a lot. And I think I don't blame HP tuners for charging what they charge. They're the only game in town. They probably spent millions of dollars to unlock that global BCU, so they got to make their money back. But until the price comes down, it's going to be tough to really push that market. And by the way, all those costs, the TCM is extra. You have to do a TCM unlock and license the TCM as well. So that's probably another $1,000.
Right.
If you're going to tune it right. So I don't think you need a TCM tune for a naturally aspirated car if you get your torque models right. But a lot of tuners don't. So one of the things with the GM cars that people don't realize is that even on the LS stuff, that the torque model was kind of important. If you had a 6L80, 6L90 transmission car, and you were having some issues with torque stuff, where you didn't make sure your torque model was accurate, the ECM does not report the right torque value to the TCM. And that means that your transmission pressures and everything are not going to be accurate. We've had 6L90 cars making 800, 900,000 horsepower in stock transmissions. No problem. But you can also smoke that transmission at 700 if you don't tune the things correctly. So, and when you went to the LT cars, torque model was even more important. Not only was it about reporting stuff to the transmission, but the whole operating system for the way the car runs is based upon demanded torque, reported torque, everything else like that. So you can find yourself getting torque management timing retard for no reason other than that your torque models aren't correct. And so a lot of guys would just cheat the torque models down to try to have the ECU avoid pulling out any timing. But then that 8L 8L80, 8L90 starts having issues,
Right.
especially on that 4 to 5 shift on a Corvette, it starts slipping, and then you're having problems. So those torque models are really, really important. They've been important for a long time in GM stuff, but when it comes now to the Corvettes, it's even more important at this point. And that's, I think, where a lot of guys who went from LS to LT had issues. Early LS stuff, obviously on a 4L60, 4L80, not as big a deal. 6Ls, torque was more important, but you could still get away with it. You could go in and bump transmission pressures. But when you go into the LT stuff, you can't just add timing, tweak your mass airflow calibration, everything else like that. The torque model has to be accurate. Huh. Yeah. And so early, and we ran into that back when we first started doing the LT stuff, 2014, 15 on C7s, did a turbocharged car, and it was really difficult because no one had really figured out yet what that was. So there's a big learning curve on that. There's lots of guys out there now teaching that stuff and how to do it. But a lot of guys, look, the tuning world's very egalitarian these days.
It's very what?
Egalitarian.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that you don't have to be someone to tune a car. You don't have to have background. You don't have to know somebody for most stuff. Whether it's Honda with Hondata, the software is free. HP tuners, software is free, right? Yeah, some open source stuff for Subarus, it's all free. There are companies like EQTech, now CARB, unfortunately, took away the ability for individuals to tune their own cars. But for most tuning solutions out there, the software is not limiting you to saying, I have a shop, here's a picture of my dyno, I'll pay the fee to get the software, right? It's anybody can download it and learn it. So that's really good in the long run, in that it gives us the ability to find bugs faster. It allows us to innovate faster, and it allows people all over the world to share tuning knowledge, right? I love the CARB Access Tuner software. It's good stuff. But at the same time, we can't just go talk to anybody in a forum about it. There's a select group of tuners that have access to it. Right? Same thing for EQTech. It's one of the reasons I love open source stuff. I really like to support open source guys, is because they're doing us a favor in terms of that development. But the downside is that anybody can spend $300 on an MPVI dongle from HP Tuners and call themselves a tuner. Yeah. Right? So you take the good with the bad. And I think also, with the advent of E85 being so popular now, E85 tolerates a lot more mistakes in tuning. You can do some really, really dumb stuff in the tune from the E85 and the motor will still live. Whereas if you try that on 91, it'd be dead in 2 seconds. So there's a lot of guys out there that will create a tune on E85 and do just, really stupid stuff.
Do you have some examples?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So this company is no longer in business out here.
Shocker.
I think they were driven out of business because of their poor work. I won't name any names, but they were tuning GM LT platforms. So Camaro SS. And the LT1 loves ethanol. It makes a ton of power on ethanol, even completely stock. But the LT platform has also got that torque management stuff, right? So a lot of times people would end up getting timing pull if they didn't know how to manage the torque models. And we had a car come in that had blown up an LT1 motor, bolt-ons in the 85. And they put a new motor in it and wanted to get it retuned. And one of the nice things about HP Tuners is that for most cars, you can't hide your work. So someone can download your file and see what you did. And we downloaded the file for this car and said, well, the timing maps look pretty reasonable. Everything's pretty normal in this car. Can't figure out what's going on. Then we went in and looked, and there is a table, several tables in the LT ECUs, the E92, that limit your minimum timing by load and RPM. And at wide open throttle, this particular shop had put in a minimum timing limit of 20 degrees. Now, 20 degrees is about what the car will run on 91 octane, ideally, but you may get some knock retard here and there. It's probably going to run 24, 26 degrees on the 85 in most cases, although the LTs typically like to run a little less timing at high RPM. But if you get a knock event, you want to be able to pull timing out, right? Well, this car, by capping the minimum timing at 20 degrees, it didn't matter if it had a knock event that wanted to pull out 12 or 15 degrees of timing. It was never going to run less than 20. And it just destroyed the motor. Haltech
has once again pushed the envelope. Today we are talking GM. Sorry, everyone else. At the end of 2025, they announced their new transmission interfaces for our GM listeners, which is a solution for those with 4L and 6L series transmissions. So whether you have a drift car, drag car, or a high-powered street car, you can finally rip out that rinky-dink, almost 2-decade-old OE setup and get set up with everything that a standalone ECU has to offer. without the compromise. To learn more, go to tunedbyshawn.com to learn about how a Haltech can take your build to the next level. And while you're at it, check out the various plug-and-play solutions for your platform as well, including some install videos. As always, you can use code Minnoxide for 5% off. Let's get back to the show.
So probably on 91 at that point, but yeah, just stupid stuff and stuff that anybody who'd even taken probably a basic, 8-hour tuning class from any of the tuning schools online would have known that you don't do that. I mean, but hey, they were a tuner. They had a shop.
Speaking of tuning classes, because we were talking about this off camera, there's a few guys out there that are doing it. Is there anybody that, if obviously you as a business, you want people to come to you for proper tunes and all that, but if
there's always people that want to learn, right?
Right.
And in fact, everybody who's ever come to work for me as a tuner started out learning how to tune their own vehicle first, and then realized they wanted to do more. So I can't complain about people wanting to learn how to tune. And I have said pretty much since year one of this business that I would always prefer a better educated customer base. Because an uneducated customer base is simply going to look at horsepower and torque, right? An educated customer base is going to look at how you get there. Mm-hmm. And I think anybody with a decent amount of knowledge can get the horsepower and torque numbers. Anybody who's tuning a B58 knows how to get to 525 wheel horsepower in E50. It's not hard to do. But if you look at the way a lot of guys do it, they throw way too much boost at it, way too much timing at it, and the ECU will go in and correct boost, correct timing, whatever, but it still made the power. It doesn't run as smooth on the street as a proper tune, but it made the power, and that's all customers are really concerned about. An educated customer, though, is going to say, hey, I noticed that there's some weird things going on, some fluctuation, whatever else. So I want that educated customer. So in terms of tuning schools, though, I mean, HPA is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that you can use a remote dyno with them, if you remember, right? And go in there and do some testing on a car. They'll set up for you. I think that's really, really cool stuff. EFI University, Ben Strader's school. So I remember Ben back when he was a tuner like me. This was, 15 plus years ago, maybe. Good guy, knew what he was doing. And then he decided to go out and start doing EFI University. And man, I did not think it would go where it went, to where now like he's like the default guy for all the NASCAR pro tuners and stuff like that. Yeah, okay. Because when NASCAR converted to fuel injection, where did all those guys go? Well, he was the guy that was doing a lot of teaching for that sort of stuff. He's got a great engine dyno setup. You'll see him doing testing with a bunch of guys. In what I love what he's doing in-cylinder pressure sensor monitoring, right? He's monitoring just the finest details you can get. It's not cheap to do, but it's how OEMs do it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, I think if you get a chance to learn from him, and he's brought in a lot of good guys to work for him who've got a ton of experience as well. So those are probably two of the big ones. There's a guy too out of Michigan, and he used to work for GM, and now his name escapes me, but he's been doing online tuning stuff or tuning schools for GM stuff, HP tuners, for a long time. You're talking
about Greg Banish?
Banish, yes. Yeah. Banish is a guy I respect as well. So if you're looking to do GM stuff, that's someone, if I want a GM specific class, I would consider calling him.
Yeah, he was doing classes in the, 2005, 2010s, I think it was?
Long time ago, yeah. And, he came out of GM as a calibrator, so, he knew what was going on. And who else you want to learn from? Somebody who knows the system inside and out, who knew that there were tables in there that you couldn't see in HP tuners, So, yeah.
Banish is one of those guys. So I call it the Banish effect, because my show, when I had Banish on, tripled and stayed after, because it just exposed me to this whole entire audience. And it's like one of my favorite people to go visit here in California. Speed Labs, they're about an hour north. Mm-hmm. Evo guys. Yeah. It's like
that's whose mainland I used. The first one I tried.
Oh, really? So that's funny.
I rented their dyno.
Full circle.
Yeah.
He found out about me through my episode with Banish, and then we started talking like a year and a half ago. Okay. And then now, full circle, I had him on the podcast. So it is kind of funny. But there's some of these guys that are just kind of staples in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, Banish was around before people were doing streaming. He was sending out CDs and actual, bound books to look at. Right.
Yeah.
So he was one of the early guys, but he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing in this industry is that you have two groups of people in the business. You have guys that they have that kind of adversarial approach to tuning. Like, I'm better than anybody else. My car made more power. I'm going to beat you at the racetrack, whatever else. And I appreciate that. You're trying to establish a name, and sometimes you go out there and you challenge everybody else and say, I bet you can't beat me. But then you get the other guys, and I find that these guys tend to be the better tuners on average, who are really interested in the knowledge, and they want to get in depth. They want to learn. And those guys are actually usually willing to share information with you and talk with you and discuss things. And I like working with guys like that. Those, people will say, oh, well, do you know this term? I'm like, oh yeah. He and I share data. I sent him a file to look at the other day. I was like, wait, don't you guys compete? Yeah. But there's plenty of business for us all. And I help him, he helps me. And, this guy, he works for a company here in LA that, he used to work for a company out of San Diego, moved up here. Really nice guy. And I think at one point we needed some CAN bus data for a flex fuel sensor, and I didn't have it. It was the weekend, couldn't find it online anywhere. I called one of my friends from another company. He said, oh, call this guy. I'm like, you think he's going to give it to me? He's competing with us. Like, oh, he's a super nice guy. I called him up. Yeah. And now I probably, communicate with him, every week, every other week. And he had a problem with his dyno and called me up, and I'm like, oh, he called the shop actually and said, oh, who called? Oh, him. Oh yeah, I'm going to call him right back because he helped me out. So you build this community of tuners that it's like, it's nice because you do better. So I've got a couple guys in Arizona that I work with regularly. I got a guy out in Texas that I know. Some of these guys knew me when they were young, and then they got into the business later, and they'll call me up. And it's nice to have that. And that's actually one of the things I really like about my business here too, is that most shops have one tuner, right? He's the guy. Don't bother him. Leave him with the car, and we'll tell the customer when it's done. And I've been in business now almost 25 years, and I have had come through here, including guys that currently work for me. I think I'm up to 5 tuners that have come through here, learned, grown, and 2 of them still work with me now. And I have an intern as well that's learning how to tune.
Real quick, just pull this a little bit closer towards you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah,
okay.
You're good.
Yeah. And, so right now I have 2 guys working for me full-time that are tuners. So 3 of us in here. Now we all have different skill sets. We all have different experience bases. There's a lot of overlap, but for a lot of cars, like HP Tuners LS, any of us can tune it. But I usually am the one that does it because I've done more. Motec stuff. My guy Daniel has tons of Motec experience, so he'll do the Motec stuff. BMWs. Ryan is my guy for that. He's relatively new, but he actually came out of aerospace and mechanical engineering, but he wanted to tune. So he interned with me for a year or 2, and then he quit his full-time job and came here to work. But he loves BMWs. And so we've developed that BMW business in a way that I never could have done on my own time. So I've learned a lot about it. He's learned a lot about tuning basics, and then applied it specifically to the BMW market. And so when there's an issue with a car, especially on days when we're all 3 in here, we don't always all work together. There's overlap, but say, hey, can you come listen to this thing? I'm not getting anything on the knock sensor, but I hear what sounds like a knock. Or, here, take these knock phones and listen while I'm watching the knock sensor here. Or, hey, can you tell me, am I getting any kind of, vapor out of the catch can on these runs or whatever? Or, hey, have you ever seen this kind of weird, timing pull on this particular platform? And having that resource in-house where multiple guys combined now, I've got 25 plus years. Daniel's got 19 years. Ryan's got 3 years now. We've got, close to 50 years of experience in-house doing fuel injection stuff. No one tuner can have that because fuel injection hasn't been around long enough for tuning to get there. And that makes life not only easier, but also more fun, because you can say, well, I know that, our guy who primarily does these cars got this much power out of it. So I need to get at least to there to make sure that I'm meeting the standard for these cars. Or, hey, you have a base file for this car so I can, shortcut the process and get going. And I don't know if there's too many other shops in the country that have more than one tuner working for them. Okay.
All right. So before we went to go check out what's going on outside, we were talking a little bit about, did you always plan to have multiple tuners?
Right. And the answer is no. This was going to be a hobbyist business for me.
When did you get your first employee?
2004.
2004. Okay.
Yeah. So first couple of years was just me. I was only coming in 1 or 2 days a week typically. And then I would rent out the space to Honda, for example, would rent 1 day a week from me, which was nice to help cover the rent. But yeah, I had other jobs. I was teaching, I was an adjunct professor at Pepperdine University, the graduate school out there. I was consulting for different companies, taking my business experience and using that. And this was kind of a hobby. And I had always expected it to kind of just be something fun to do. I met my wife in 2004, and we've been together ever since. And 2005, I decided we were going to grow the business a little bit. It was more fun, but I was pretty well off financially at that point, and my wife was making far more money than I was at that point. So it's like, hey, I can just do this. I'm making enough money to cover expenses. She's doing well. You got plenty of money in the bank. We'll be good to go. But in 2000, so I had the one employee, in 2004, and that's actually his car right there, by the way. So my first employee just brought this car back to us.
This the new Integras,
Integra,
right?
yeah.
Dude, these things are sick. I mean, they are a little high on the price side of things. Do you think we'll come back to the topic in a second, but do you think they're worth it?
No, I don't think anything front wheel drive is worth $50,000. It's just, I'm sorry. It's no.
Okay.
But I love the engine. I love the platform. It's a great car. It's just too expensive.
Yeah. It's like a nice, cheaper front wheel drive BMW.
Yeah. Yeah. And it looks good and everything else. So, but yeah, so I had my one employee, Thomas, and he was with me. We moved over here, met my wife in 2004, moved here in 2005. And then around 2006, she began to have some health problems. And she ended up taking some time off from work. She actually got injured during a work trip. And then during that whole process, even though she was technically out on disability leave, they fired her entire sales team. And so they weren't firing her because she was injured or whatever, couldn't work. They just wanted to replace the sales team with somebody cheaper. And her health continued to deteriorate. So I went from having to support myself on a relatively limited income here, but with plenty of savings from my previous ventures too. Now I need to support two people, and one of them is not well. And so I made a decision at that point that I was going to grow this business even more and, start hiring more people, everything else like that. So it was a conscious decision about 4 or 5 years in that this business needs to support both of us now for the foreseeable future, and let's make it happen. So that was when I decided it was going to be a bigger venture. I already had Thomas working for me. I taught him how to tune, and I said, well, we can do this with other people as well. And so I would recruit customers, or sometimes people would come to me after the fact and say, I'd really like to learn how to do this. Will you teach me how to do it? And like I said, everybody that's come here started out tuning their own car, and they came to me, asked for help learning how to tune. And I've taken on more people than I've hired. Some people just didn't have what it took. But the ones that did, Daniel has been with me for 19 years now. And so very good guy. But yeah, it's an interesting environment because tuners tend to be very protective of what they know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's a belief that their knowledge base is somehow unique. And when it comes to maybe where to find certain tables, where to find, certain things within an ECU. Yeah. Some people go in and plow through it with WinOLS and look through the binaries and are able to identify tables that maybe HP tuners or SCT haven't found yet, and then get those tables defined so they can make changes that nobody else does. My guy, Ryan, who's doing the BMW stuff, has actually gone in and found a lot of limiters and other things that other tuners aren't touching. So mainly because he was running into them during his launch process. But yeah, so that is knowledge there. So that knowledge I understand protecting because you put the time in to find it. But when somebody's using something like HP tuners, where you have your own tables to find, you don't have any new tables to find, or even running a standalone that it has standard tables in it, and you say, well, my timing map or my fuel map is special and I don't want anybody to see it. That's bullshit. I mean, it's absolute bullshit. You're not that special. It's math and physics. That's all it is. Yeah. And so trying to gatekeep or whatever. Look, I understand you don't want somebody saying, I'm going to take this tune and use it as a starting point and modify, but they're going to do it eventually anyways. And so we don't lock our tunes. Everybody's like, oh, don't you lock your tunes? Don't you put a password on? I'm like, no. I mean, yeah, look, if you have a CARB access port, you can't look at the tune. That's just how CARB works. You have to have our license to do it. Same thing with EQTech. But for anything else, HP tuners, we don't try and put a lock on things. Standalones, we don't put a lock on it because it's your car. It's your ECU. We're selling you the tune. You do whatever you want with it at that point. And I'm sure at some point, some other shop has sent somebody in for a tune and then pulled the tune off to see what's going on, especially if they're new. Great. Good for you. We got paid for it. That's all we asked for. If you don't understand why we did the things we did, copying and pasting is not going to help you,
right?
To custom tune another car. It's not how it works. And the best example I can give of this one would be, we had a customer come to us probably 5 or 6 years ago, and he is a military guy, had an S14 that he had with him in Hawaii while he's stationed out there, had it tuned out there. And then Hawaii has higher quality gas than we do, a little higher octane. Brought it out here and said, look, I just want to detune it a little bit for the 91. I don't want to risk my motor, SR20. And sure, no problem. So he had a Power FC, very old school standalone, right? Mm-hmm. And we have the full Apexi factory software and everything. And we said, great, yeah, we'll just go in there and pull out some timing, lower your boost a little bit. And his ECU was locked.
Huh.
And I said, wow, I've never seen, I mean, you can lock a Power FC, but I've never seen anybody do it. I said, who tuned your car? He told me the name of the shop. I said, oh, I've been out in Hawaii tuning before. I use their shop. I know that guy. He's a fine guy. I spent a week out there tuning one time in Honolulu. And so let me call him up. I've got his number. I'll call him up. He'll give me the password. It won't be a problem. Called the guy up and said, yeah, I've got one of your customers here. He just moved out to California. We need to detune his car for 91. But I know she password locked. Can you give me the password so I can take some timing out of the car? Because if I have to rewrite it over, it's going to be 3 times as much to get this car retuned because I got to start from scratch. And he said, no, I can't do that. I said, why not? He said, the person who taught me to tune said, always protect your tune files. I said, I get it. I said, but you know me. You don't have anywhere near the experience I do tuning cars. You think I'm really going to steal something from you or do something uniquely different, that you're doing something different that I don't know about? I mean, you know who I am. I'm asking you to unlock this one particular car because your customer needs a retune and I'm trying to help them out here. I said, it's going to difference between $400 and $1,000. I said, can you do this for me? And he refused to do it. And I said, look, man, this is bull. I mean, you don't own this customer's ECU. You don't have any right to lock it. There's a belief that your tune is your intellectual property, but you sold it. This is not like it's a piece of software that somebody's paying you to use the license. You're putting something on. It's like if you went to somebody's home and did some work and then said, well, yeah, but you're not allowed to open this door to see what I did on the other side of the wall. You know, it's fine. You know,
use my internet.
Yeah,
sort of deal.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not right. And I'm sure there will be people saying they disagree, and that's perfectly fine. Like I said, if you have found something that no one else has access to, you've developed a table or you've developed a solution, I get it. That's your IP because no one else has done that. You put the time in. You shouldn't have to give it up for free. But if you're using an existing platform, you know, software, whatever you want to call it, and you're just making changes to the tables, you're not creating, you're just calibrating. And I don't think you should be able to lock somebody out from that if it's their car.
Do you think, I just want to push back on that. I want to see what your thoughts are. Do you think that sometimes a business protecting itself, for example, if you're making drag cars or whatever, street cars, and you want to lock somebody out so they don't mess it up and then put the blame on you, is there anything to be said there? There
is something to be said there. And I guess I've never really had a lot of customers that would be issues like that.
Yeah.
You know, but
stay away from the issue customers. How about that?
Yeah. Well, then you do have to be selective sometimes for your customers, right? And so that is a good point. That is a good point. If you're doing something where you have a customer that wants to go in and play with the keys and you want to warranty your work, yeah, that could be a problem. And it's kind of funny because we do warranty our work. We don't guarantee that you're not going to blow your motor up eventually. You're making 1,000 horsepower on a stock motor, you eventually might blow up. But what we always tell people is, if you're the original owner of this tune and you have a problem with the car, let us know. We'll look at it. If it's tune related, we'll fix it for you, no charge. Most cases, that's going to be something like, say, cold start on the 85. We tune the car in summertime and we get a cold snap in the winter. It's in the 30s or 40s and the car has a long crank on cold start. Let us know. We'll clean that up for you. It doesn't matter whether it's next week or next year. We'll take care of it. Or, hey, I'm having a problem, with my launch controls not working properly or something like that. Yeah, we'll take care of that, no charge. But yeah, if you have somebody that can go in and make changes, yeah, it could be a problem. And I guess if I had experienced that, I might be of a different opinion. But I've never had somebody come back to me and say, yeah, you blew my motor up, and look at the tune file. I've had customers come back in when they complain about something's going on, and then I'll download the tune file, and it's like, that wasn't the file we put on there. To do a comparison. And then we'll ask them, well, did somebody else mess with the car? Well, yeah. Okay, well, we'll fix it for you, or we'll flash your old file back on for you. But if you want us to make any changes, that's going to cost you because this is not our problem at this point.
Sure.
But in most cases, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we've had good luck with our customers over the years, and we've dealt with a lot of people. I mean, in our biggest years when tuning was cheaper and we were doing more low dollar cars, we were tuning up to 1,500 cars a year.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably now down to 1,000 or so a year, maybe a little bit less.
Wow.
But because tuning's gotten a lot more expensive. Inflation has been huge. But back in the days when we were doing a lot of Honda stuff, I mean, we would do 8 cars a day some days. Actually, Daniel and I, when we had the Vegas facility, we were up there one time for an import face-off event, and it was almost all Hondas. But over the course of 36 hours, we worked nonstop. So I'd go back to the hotel and sleep. He'd work. I'd come back. He'd go to the hotel and sleep. And over 36 hours, I think we dynoed like 42 cars, which is just nuts. So
over how many hours?
36 hours.
You said 42 cars?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So it was crazy. But the Honda market, it's like nowadays the Honda market's kind of bifurcated. You get the guys running really nice setups, all-wheel drive, K-Series, big turbo. And then you got the guys with an old beater trying to run, open source Chrome, chip DCU.
It is a very wide range, isn't it?
Yeah. And so it's like, and honestly, it's like, I appreciate the guys running the old stuff, but we raised our prices and just said, look, if you can't afford to spend the time and pay for a decent tune, your car is probably not really ready yet at this point. And it might be better if you buy your own chip burner, or you find somebody who's willing to do it for cheaply. It also comes down to opportunity cost too. The guys who want the cheapest tunes are oftentimes the customers that require the most hand-holding.
I could see that.
Maybe because they don't have the money to do it right, or they've had to try and learn how to do it themselves. And it bothers me sometimes that we can't say, we want to help everybody out, but we only have so many hours in a day. We only have so many hours available of dyno time, and our costs have, since we've been in this building, our rent has more than doubled. I tried to buy this building multiple times, but the owner didn't want to sell it. So, just the inflation of rent and utilities and everything else like that, our costs had to go up dramatically. But the cost of buying a Honda Civic and a chip DCU has not. So those guys don't want to necessarily spend more money. I guess that's where you talk about kind of choosing your customers a little bit, your pricing model and everything else like that. But that's the other thing too, is that, my guys don't want to have to fix a customer's car when it comes in. We don't have time for that. We can try and tell you what's wrong with it, but if we put you on the dyno, you're spending money. So make sure it's right before you come in. That's one of the reasons we like working with shops a lot. So we have a select number of shops that we have very close relationships with, guys that build everything from LSs to Subarus to BMWs. And we have the kind of relationship with them where they will ask us, hey, can you send me a map to get this car running? Okay, it's doing this. I'll send us a log back. We make some adjustments. So the car is already up and ready to run. They've already shaken it down. They've already leak checked it. So when they bring the car in, it takes us half the time to tune the car. And so for those guys, we're offering really big discounts to those shops because they make our lives so much easier. So if we have a customer come in that's got issues, it's like either they did it themselves or they went to a shop that maybe we don't know. It's like, look, you've got issues going on with your car. And we can keep trying to solve these things, but every time you come back in with an issue, you're spending money that you didn't have to spend. So we really recommend you go visit a shop to take a look at this stuff.
What's that split look like between working with shops and individuals?
I'd say right now, 30 to 40% of our business comes from shops that we know.
Would you prefer that number to be higher?
Yes and no. So purely from a business perspective, 100% would be best, because then every car is vetted. You have the same point of contact every time. So you don't have to re-explain things to somebody. When a new customer comes in that never been here before, individual customer, you got to show them what you're doing, why you're taking the wheels off. We're taking care of your wheels. Don't worry, we're not going to chip anything. If they've got carbon brake rotors, don't worry, we're not going to tap your rotor and have any issues with it. Don't worry about your paint. When we jack it up, we're using a hockey puck, under the diff or under the jacking point so that there's no damage to anything.
Yeah, I should get one of those.
Yeah. Well, and some customers are pickier than others. Other customers are like, I jack it up there all the time with just a metal saddle. It doesn't matter. But you have to make sure the customer feels comfortable. Once they've been here once, it's not a big deal anymore. When you're dealing with a shop, I'll give you an example. We do a lot of Subarus for a shop called Powered by RPM down in Huntington Beach. Small shop. 2 guys, the lead guy there. He likes to do relatively high-end projects, especially for Subarus. And so he's working on 1 or 2 cars at a time, but doing a complete build. And when he brings a car in, he comes with the car. So he and the customer will come. And he brings his own fuel cans. He brings his tools. So I know that when he brings me a car, everything about that car is going to be right. And if there's any issue, he's going to be prepared to fix it, get it done. So pretty much every car he brings, I'm talking like 99% hit rate here is going to get off that dyno that day running the way it should.
Cool.
So yeah, so guys like that, I love working with guys like that. I'll bend over backwards for guys like that because they allow me to do what I want to do, which is get in there and tune the car. I don't want to fix a loose bolt. I don't want to find a vacuum hose that's torn or something like that, or didn't put zip ties on it or a clamp or something like that. I don't want to have to worry about, did you put the right oil in it? Or you didn't drain the fuel tank properly. So how can we get ethanol in there and get the right mixture? So when you work with quality shops like that are going out of their way to make sure things are done right, when we're talking about big discounts, I mean, I give those guys a massive discount because the time savings and the stress reduction is worth it. Yeah.
All right. Let's give me the checklist. What's the checklist you give do you give a checklist to a newbie? Like, what are the things that you need to do in order to be ready to go to the dyno?
So, in the old days when people just called up and scheduled an appointment, we just say, make sure you've got this much fuel, make sure you have your wheel lock key, make sure it's got oil and everything else like it. But nowadays when we're sending out base maps online or we're dealing with shops or whatever, what we're usually telling them is if you haven't changed your oil in over 3,000 miles, change your oil. If your spark plugs are more than 50,000 miles old, put in new plugs and gap them to this value for your car. Make sure you got this fuel in the tank. Make sure you have at least this much or no more than this, depending upon whether we're on flex fuel or something like that. And bring your wheel lock key and everything else like that. Beyond that, there's not much else we can tell the customer. We can ask them to get a compression leak down test. We can ask them to do a smoke check on the intake system, make sure there's no leaks. But most customers aren't prepared to do that easily, and they have to find a shop that can do it. So in a lot of cases, what we tell them is, look, bring it in, and we'll check over the basic stuff here. And if we put it on the dyno and we find a problem, you're still going to pay something, but we'll bill you a partial and you have to go get it fixed. Asking customers at the volumes that we do, trying to get them to do smoke checks and compression leak down checks, it's just not going to happen. And we're not going to do it here. We're not removing parts, putting parts on the car. I'm not trying to get my hand down on the side of an EJ25 and screw in a compression tester, So for us, it's, everybody's like, aren't you worried about someone bringing you a car that's about to blow up? I said, no, not really, because we can almost always tell when a car's got issues very early. If we don't hear it when it's driving into the parking lot, we'll hear it when we get on the dyno, open up the hood and start things up. We'll see, hey, your manifold vacuum's not good, or you hear it on cranking. You can detect most problems pretty easily that way. And for the really big builds, most of the big high horsepower stuff, that's not coming out of somebody's garage. That's usually coming out of a shop that we can trust that's doing their work.
Like that 1,200 horsepower Camaro.
Right. That's been worked on by some really good people who know what they're doing. Motors coming from the right place, or a shop that, a Subaru that comes out of Powered by RPM. We know those guys know what they're doing. And so when we're trying to push, 800, 900 horsepower on a Subaru or 1,200 horsepower on an LT or an LS, it's coming out of a place where we know what's going on. And if a car rolls in and looks like it's just a pile, we'll say, no, we're not going to tune this at this point. And
does that happen every once in a while?
Oh yeah, it happens. Yeah, absolutely. And, in the old days, I didn't take deposits. I just literally scheduled appointments and people come in. I always had plenty of people coming in. Nowadays, people like to shop around a lot. So if you don't take a deposit, you'll get no-shows. Which is annoying. Yeah, it is. So we mandate deposits now. We tell people they're refundable as long as you give us a 24-hour notice, on cancellation, because we can always get more people in. We just can't have you calling us 10 minutes for your appointment and saying I'm not going to be there, or ghosting us, not even returning the phone call. Mm-hmm. So, if you come in and you made that deposit and it's like, look, your car's not ready, I'll keep your deposit. I'm not giving you your deposit back, but you got to go fix that and come back. I'll keep your deposit for another day. Or, we got some dyno time in on it and these problems showed up. I'm going to bill you a partial tune and then we'll bill you the balance plus a remount fee when you come back. And so we try to be fair about that stuff. I don't ever want somebody to feel like they got taken when they come in, especially if they had a problem you got a problem with your car, it's bad enough. Most guys that come in with problems don't know they have them. And so they feel bad already. They feel bad because, one, they feel bad they wasted your time. They feel bad that their car is not what they wanted it to be. They feel bad maybe because whoever told them they did the work didn't do the work right. So I don't want to add to that. So I try to make it as easy on it as possible. Every once in a while, you'll get a guy trying to come in and trying to get you to take responsibility for their problems. Mm-hmm. I had a guy one time with the Dodge Charger.
Well, checks out already.
Yeah. And all he wanted was a baseline. And said, sure, no problem. We'll do a baseline on your car. Put on the dyno, made 2 passes. Second pass, his radiator and tank blew off. It's like a 2021 too. It's like, that's really weird. So, coolant everywhere. And so, well, we're done. Sorry, man, you have a radiator issue. Like, can't do anything about that. So we got off the dyno, start cleaning up. I'm like, look, man, I'm not even going to charge you. I feel bad for your car. We'll just let you go. And because normally we charge you a fee for the cleanup too. And then you get paid the baseline and the cleanup. And sorry. Yeah. And so we pushed the car out and say, yeah, you probably want to call a tow truck and go to whoever your mechanic is. Like, well, aren't you going to fix it? Why would I fix it? He said, well, the radiator was fine when you put it on the dyno. Yeah, but I can't do anything to the dyno to make your radiator blow up. He said, but you were pushing the car really hard. You were flooring it. Well, that's the purpose of the dyno. But yeah, isn't that make it your fault for the radiator blowing up? Like, no. And I'm a really nice guy for most people. I don't get angry or aggressive in most cases, but this guy ticked me off. And he was pushing harder and harder. I said, look, pal, I said, you're lucky that I'm not pushing your car out the street right now and leaving you out there with it. You came in here with this car. We didn't touch the car except to put it on the dyno and run it at the same kind of load you'd see on the street. I said, if you want to play this game, go ahead, and we're going to have problems. He called a tow truck, left. Now, to his credit, he came back 3 days later. I thought, oh, great. As soon as I saw him, I said, oh, great. He's going to, claim he's calling bar. He's going to threaten me with a lawsuit, whatever the case is. He came up and said, I'm sorry. I said, okay. He said, I actually had this problem once before on the car about 2 months ago, and I had a new radiator, and then it blew up again. I said, okay, so you've got something else going on with your car. He said, yeah. He said, I shouldn't have even tried to blame you. I was just really upset. I'm sorry for trying to hold you responsible for this. And I was actually very surprised by that, because normally when a guy comes in and tries to do that, tries to sneak a car past you that's got problems, they have, ulterior motives. They got shady motives in that one. So at least that guy came back in. And,
that's legit, at least.
Yeah, and said, okay, I shouldn't have done that. But yeah, occasionally you get guys coming in. The last one that we had come in, I think it was a Subaru. And the car came in and wanted to tune, pretty much completely stock, at least looked completely stock. And said, okay, so, you just want a basic tune? Yeah, I just want a little more horsepower out of it. So we bring the car in. And when he brought it in, he never turned the car off. He was sitting in the parking lot idling. So he brings it in, pulls it in, and he's like, and we start to put on the dyno and shut the car. He's like, why'd you turn it off? I'm like, well, because we have to download the file, right? And we got to create a new file for it. He's like, oh, okay. Well, can't you just run it as is? I'm like, well, yeah, we'll run a stock too, but we want to get the file before we do anything else. Go back to start the car up. And this is why Subarus are hard to do. Sometimes you can't tell if a Subaru's got a miss sometimes because they already sound like they're missing, right?
Yeah, sure.
On equal length headers, right? And it wasn't necessarily missing hard at idle when it was warm, but on cranking, you could hear that it was way down on compression on one cylinder. I mean, like, I don't know, 50, 60 PSI where it should have been 120, 140. And we just went, nope, not doing it. So, why not? You've got a problem with your cylinder. Oh, well, what do you think it is? I'm like, rings? I don't know. Well, can't you at least test it and see? I'm like, no, dude, you didn't know this was a problem? I said, how much oil do you burn? Oh, maybe a quart every 1,000 miles. I'm like,
holy shit.
Yeah, okay, well, the dealer might say that's acceptable, but when your engine sounds like that on cranking and you're burning a quart every 1,000 miles, I'm guessing you're missing a piece of your piston on one of your cylinders, right? It's not there anymore. And, you do this long enough, you look in somebody's eyes, you can tell it's like, yeah, you knew, and you were hoping it would blow up in the dyno and then we'd have to pay for it or something like that. So, but, every once in a while you will have a problem with the dyno, and you can't say that you didn't cause it. Mm-hmm. If you have 1,000 cars come through in a year, every once in a while a car is going to blow up in the dyno. And if you can't say, oh, your oil's the wrong weight, or, you had a problem on a cylinder, or your injector clogged up, if it's not a single cylinder failure on the dyno, as a tuner, you got to say, okay, did I do something wrong? And every once in a while, it doesn't happen often, but we will end up, paying for part of somebody's motor. And a lot of people are like, really? Yeah, we do, because even if we're not sure if something we did caused the problem, it's better to take responsibility and make sure the customer's taken care of. Mm-hmm. Because if you blow somebody's motor up in the dyno and basically go, not my problem, when you might be responsible for it, you're just shooting yourself in the foot as a business. And so I'd say it maybe every few years you'll get a car like that where it's just, did we calibrate the O2 sensor before this car? Did we check the fuel? Were we watching fuel pressure on it? Could something have happened where we should have caught it? And if the answer to more than one of those things is yes, then it's like, okay, whoever the tuner was, you might have screwed up on this one. And so we're going to end up helping this customer out because we can't say for sure that it wasn't a mistake. And anybody who says that they never made a mistake tuning is lying.
Yeah.
Right?
You do it long enough.
Yeah. You do it long enough. It could be the end of a day. You're busy and you've been through a bunch of cars and you forgot to check fuel pressure while you were tuning the car. Or maybe the car was showing oil pressure dropping, but you weren't watching it because you were watching your laptop screen and the oil pressure gauge was on the dash or something. A car like that where the oil pressure is dropping, it doesn't mean it's your fault that the oil pressure was dropping, but you got to catch that and stop. Mm-hmm. If you don't, it's like, well, I saw an oil pressure drop and I kept running it. You're partially responsible for it at that point. You got to have some mechanical sympathy. So once it happens once, it rarely ever happens to a tuner again though.
Yeah.
So
it's a learning experience.
Once somebody's lost a motor on the dyno and they want some ice cream?
Yeah, it's the ice cream truck, isn't it? You're probably going to need to ship your car soon or know somebody that will. And as someone who used to work in freight logistics, I understand the difficulties of finding reliable transport, especially when trying to make it to rallies, racetracks, or to warehouse to hide your Corvette because you're going through a messy divorce and when she says everything, she means everything. Anywho, Nick Shearer is the proud owner of Sure Thing Logistics. Having traveled much of the country with every type of vehicle you can imagine, he's got the experience and reliability that you want to ensure a safe journey for your pride and joy. If you want to find out what it takes to ship your vehicle, go to surethinglogistics.net, fill out the intake form, and be sure to let him know I sent you. Let's get back to the show.
So yeah, once you lose a motor and you say, you know what, I might have screwed up, then it kind of sensitizes you to looking at everything a little bit differently going forward. For example, my BMW guy, Ryan, he's never lost a customer motor in the dyno, but he lost one of his own. So when his B58, his B58 still stock, but on his original B58 motor that was in the car, he was pushing up over 800 horsepower and he had a weird boost surge coming into boost in the dyno. Now, normally when something abnormal happens, you get out of it. But he decided, well, the boost surged, but it came back down, so I'm going to stay in it. And then it oscillated again, did something weird, and it kicked a rod out, right? Just a big torque surge. And he was so embarrassed about that after the fact. He was like, well, at least it's my car, not somebody else's. He figured it out, but I should have done this. I should have done this. And I said, guess what? You'll never do it again. Don't worry about it. Because that traumatic experience will teach you to never, ever, you can always make another dyno run. You can't always replace the motor easily, right? He was lucky enough to find a junkyard motor for $500 that is now in the car making 870, no problem. Yeah. But it was a lesson that is really, really valuable for him. And I don't want to say that every tuner should blow up a motor once just to learn that, but when it happens, it is a valuable lesson.
You better, ideally, it's something that's within your means to fix.
Well, that's the other thing too, is people ask, why do you charge so much more money for certain vehicles? Why is it that we're going to charge more for a GTR than for an SR20, right? Or why is it that, for a while we were tuning a lot of exotics. So we were doing stuff on McLarens and Ferraris and Bentleys, so all these different vehicles. And like for a typical McLaren reflash, we were charging $5,000.
Oh, holy shit.
Yeah. So I didn't like dealing with the exotic car market. I actually partnered with another guy who knew the customer base and he interfaced with the customer, so I didn't have to. And we had a falling out, had some issues, so I walked away from that business. But the money was good on that stuff, but the risk is high. I mean, in order to put a McLaren on the dyno, you have to take the diffuser off, okay, because you can't jack it up.
$10,000 diffuser.
Yeah, and the McLaren's build quality is not the best. So it's screwed in with what look like machine screws, basically. And so you take it out, it's like, are you retapping the hole every time? And yeah, and the expectation, two groups of exotic car customers. You get the guys who have so much money, they don't care. It's like, do what you got to do, make it happen, fine. Then you get the other guys who are kind of just getting into that market.
It's a stretch for them to buy. Like McLaren is like, $130 or whatever. It's like, I could stretch it and finance it.
Right. It's not the guy with the brand new 720. It's the guy with the 10-year-old, MP4C, right? Yeah. So, those guys like, super paranoid because if something happens to this car, they can't afford it to replace it, right? And it's just there's also kind of a behavioral pattern from the exotic car owners. The really rich guys were cool as hell. I mean, most of them, you wouldn't even know they had that kind of money, right? Because they didn't need to show off for it to anybody. You got $1 billion in the bank. You don't care what anybody else thinks, right? The guy who had $1 million or $2 million, and stretched for the car, a lot of those guys were assholes, like kind of attitude where they come in and they kind of treat you like you're, waitress at a local diner or something like that. Like, hey, I've got a great car and I'm paying you a lot of money to work on it. So kiss my ass. And
right.
Yeah, not happening. I don't take that for 1 second. So I told my partner at that time, I said, look, I don't want to deal with these people at all because at some point I'm going to punch one of them in the nose, if they cop that attitude with me. So, but yeah. But with those exotics, you got to charge that kind of money because if you blow up a McLaren motor, you spend $30,000 probably to replace that. So,
do you think you're going to see that more with, like, for example, C8Z06s? They're not a cheap motor. No,
they're not. But blowing up a C8Z06 is really hard. Naturally aspirated.
Yeah, fair enough.
You got to do something pretty dumb to it. And turbo LT stuff. But so you have to consider that cost. So I'll tell you the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I had a 992.1 GT3 RS come in.
Okay.
This guy owned a used car lot, had a lot of really cool cars, and turned out to be a great customer of ours. But at the time, this is the first car we'd done for him. Sorry. I'm going to cough. So this 992.1 GT3 RS, or 991.2, sorry. First car we'd done for this guy. Really cool, dropped it off, CARB Access Sport. And I've tuned Porsches with CARB before, not a big deal. I think this was the first 991.2 we'd done. And so baseline the car, went in to create a map for it, went to flash the car, and the ECU bricked. I think it actually has 2 ECUs, but and I couldn't connect to the ECU anymore, couldn't flash it, couldn't recover it, nothing. First thing I did was, and it was a weekend, so I told the customer, I said, look, we're having a little ECU problem. I can't get a hold of CARB right now, but as soon as Monday comes around, I will. Please forgive us. I'll give you a discount on the car. Please, thanks for your patience. And so, of course, I've got 48 hours before I can call CARB, so my mind starts wandering. I start checking into ECU prices for,
no.
And what it would cost me to get it on a Porsche. I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to be into this. I was only charging the guy like, I think $2,000 for everything, $3,000 including the Access Sport. And I'm like, I'm going to be out way more than that if I have to replace this guy's ECU. Because I mean, I'm not even qualified to remove all the stuff I have to do to get to the ECU to pull it out, let alone get it programmed and by Porsche and everything. And I'm just freaking out. And that 48 hours was one of the worst 48 hours of my tuning career, just because I'm sitting there just thinking about, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Monday morning comes around, I call CARB, and I've never really had to use much customer service from CARB. Their stuff is really robust. It works really well. The software works really well. But I have never gotten better customer service from a tuning company than I got from CARB that day. They had 3 different people talk to me in the course of like 30 minutes, trying to figure out what happened, how to fix it, everything else like that. It turns out that the ECU in the Porsches sometimes, or the system during programming, will shut itself off. And so even if you have the right voltage, everything else. And they said, well, the solution is you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to do a full recovery and program in the car, and you're going to need to press the ignition switch on the dash once every 60 seconds. I said, okay. And you say, are you sure this is going to work? I said, we've had to do it once before. It should work just fine. And unfortunately, the recovery and programming process took 90 minutes.
Oh, no.
So I had to sit in a 991.2 Porsche GT3 with really tight race seats for 90 minutes programming this thing, and just click. I literally had a stopwatch on my phone, just click. And fortunately, at the end of it, it worked. So it worked, programmed it, it made power, everything else like that. But stuff like that's why you got to charge more for those expensive cars. If it was a Honda,
such a nerve-wracking 90 minutes though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Is it going to work? Is it going to work? Is it going to work? And yeah, if it was a Honda, I could have gotten an ECU for $400. Even like one of the ECUs that were really prone to bricking with HP tuners were the Toyota Tundras, the V8s. Those ECUs just love to brick. You got to keep a charger on them, keep an eye on things. And I had a car one time that had a bunch of accessories on the car, all kinds of lights, radios, everything else. And we thought we had enough on it and didn't, and it bricked the ECU. That ECU cost me like $900. I can afford to do that. Basically, I didn't make any money on the tune, but it happens. But yeah, stuff like exotics, things going wrong. It's like you you don't want to push it. So at that point, when the exotic business when the person I was working with, we kind of had falling out, I said, I don't want to be in this business anymore. It's too stressful. I mean, it's cool there's some really nice cars. We did a 488 Pista. Awesome. You know, 992 GT2 RS. Awesome. We did a bunch of Mercedes AMG GTR Black Series.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was just the flat plane, V8 version instead of the regular V8. I mean, 750, 800 wheel horsepower. And these customers are like, can you please test drive it, make sure it shifts properly? I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, right? So, but like we have to carry insurance for the shop, and you have to carry insurance for whatever cars are at the shop. And those cars were worth so much money, I couldn't have more than one or two of those in the shop at a given time, or else I would be over my coverage limit for vehicles stored at the shop at that point. Mm-hmm. And just that kind of stress, it's not for me. I don't like stress. Mm-hmm. I like being relaxed, I like being chill. I can't be chill with exotic cars. It's not for me at this point. But you know what? That's good, because there's plenty of other people out there doing it, and good for them.
Yeah, no, it's like every time, so my dad's got an AMG GTR, right? And I'm like, this splitter is like significantly more expensive than the one on my Golf. So I'm very careful getting in the driveway. So I get it. Okay. So what's next for you then? What's the next 5 years look like? 10 years?
Well, 5 years is actually a great number, because I've been talking to my guys about that. So I'm 55. My wife says I'm not allowed to quit because I'd be spending too much time at home at that point. She expects me to at least do 2 days a week. She says otherwise I'd be bored and I'd drive her nuts. So, but at the same time, 25 years of doing the same thing is a lot. And I am not tired of tuning at all, but I am a little tired of the day-to-day grind of the regulatory environment in California. Got to pay rent, got to handle payroll, got to deal with all the different things like that. So I would like to be able to step back a little bit over the next 5 years and focus just on tuning the cars I like tuning. Come in 2 or 3 days a week, tune a couple cars, have a good time, and still see the business go. I don't have kids, so I can't pass it on to anybody. So whether it's my employees want to take a share in the company, or somebody else comes in and wants to buy a piece of it, or, maybe in 5 years I say, you know what, I'm just going to go freelance. I know all these other shops, some of them can buy dynos, and I'll be happy to go tune a car here and there. I already go out to Palm Desert every other week and tune cars at a friend's shop out there. He's got a dyno jet. I could do that. I'm not in a position where I need to make the money anymore. I want to do it because I like doing it. So if I can find a way to keep this business and be able to let somebody else handle day-to-day operations, I'll do this till I'm 80, if people will still have me do it. Some people might be a little uncomfortable with me coming in with a cane and, walking up to their car and that guy's going to tune my car. But if they'll let me do it at 80, I'll keep doing it. I don't want to stop. But yeah, I am. And if it wasn't California, I probably wouldn't be as tired of it. But California is not a great place to do business right now.
To keep up on everything, I imagine.
Yeah, all the, for example, we're in Wilmington, but it's actually part of the city of Los Angeles. So we have to comply with the Bureau of Automotive Repair, which is a state organization. Not too hard to do. They have pretty simple rules. But also now LA now has their own special fee and inspection for automotive businesses. So there's another inspection, even though BAR already does that stuff. And that was just added in the last couple of years. And then the LA tax environment, they don't charge you a flat tax for a business license. They charge you a percentage of your gross, not your net, your gross, which is ridiculous because, well, you've seen the homeless population out here. And what services are we getting? The road quality is poor. The money's not going to help us be more successful in business. And the state of California in general, California Resources Board does not make it easy to do business. Mm-hmm. I used to sell parts up until about 2015. And in 2015 was when Jeff Evans from Evans Tuning was basically hit hard by the EPA. He's a one-man operation, him and his wife, running a dyno, selling some ECUs, right? So very similar to what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And they came in and hit him with like 400 counts of violations of the Clean Air Act. Potential fines of up to like $1.2 million, right? Like, what the hell? So I spent a lot of time emailing back and forth, talking with Jeff. He was kind enough to share with me the documents he got from the EPA, what they were going to charge him with and stuff like that. I said, this is ridiculous. And I noticed at the time that every single thing they were hitting him for was selling something. So they basically went through his invoices for the last 3 years and said, yeah, you sold 200 Hondadas and 100 AM EMSs, and all these are emissions defeat devices. And first thing I did was I called the guys over at Honda and said, hey, you guys need to be aware that EPA considers you to be selling stuff that's in violation, right? And then the second thing I did was I can't sell your stuff anymore. I used to sell, I think at one point I was top 5 retailers for Honda in the country.
It's a good chunk of change.
It was a nice chunk of change. Now, obviously the profit's not what it is on labor and tuning, but
yeah,
it was still nice. I mean, literally just shipping parts out or selling parts to people, it's extra money. And I said, I'm going to give that up. I probably took a 20% haircut on my revenue when I stopped selling parts. Not that much profit, but it was a drop. But I was afraid. I mean, I saw what they were doing to Jeff Evans, and I said, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be in his situation. I feel bad for the guy, what he's going through. I think he ended up settling for like $50,000 and, stating that he wouldn't do this stuff anymore or whatever. And that's when he started up his own tuning school.
Yeah.
Right?
What's it called again? Isn't it something like, blanking on a name on it, but yeah. It was like Evans Performance, something
like that.
EPA, I think.
Yeah. So, I appreciate his resilience in the face of that stuff, but what they did to him was very unfair. And what's funny is about 2 or 3 weeks after Jeff got hit, the EPA came visiting Honda.
Wow.
So they were prepared, and that changed how Honda did the business completely, and what's funny now is they just got acquired. I don't know if you heard about that. Same company that owns EQ Tech and CARB.
Oh, okay.
Just acquired Honda. Yeah. And, which there is some concern there because CARB and EQ Tech CARB got hit up by the EPA. That's when the whole Green Speed initiative started. And because EQ Tech is owned by the same company, EQ Tech was told, you've got to do the same thing. So they had to take out a lot of features from their software. There's concern that they might do that to Honda as well because parent company doesn't want any liability. So everybody needs to play by the rules. But EPA is hard enough to deal with, but California makes it even harder. And so, might we see changes here? Maybe. I mean, I know that some of the diesel stuff going on now with the EPA now saying that deletes are not illegal in some cases. I don't know how that's going to work out. I'd love to see, CARB's authority curtailed. But until that happens though, day-to-day operations in California are not fun. I always tell people that if I was starting a business today, I would not do it in California. Never would do it here. But our customer base here is massive.
That's what I've heard from other shops out here. Actually, now that you bring it up again, it's like, there's a few people, it's like, they'd love to move, but it's a big jump to switch states. Yeah,
because you're leaving behind all your customers. We're doing more on the e-tuning side of things now. One of my new guys has been really helping me set that up. We'll never be like a Lund or a Body, in terms of that. But if we're doing more e-tuning, it might give us the flexibility to have the ability to move someplace else. But like I said, at my age, thinking about picking up and moving and trying to reestablish, it's probably 5 years to get back to where you were. If you go to some new place, at that point, I think I'm just a freelancer at that point. So, but I love coming to work. I really do. And especially with the influx of new talent we've had in the last few years, there's a younger vibe here as well now. So we've got people we've got people that are under 30. We've got people that like me in their 50s. But we all share a common love of cars and engines. And so we have that common language, and yet we can, come from very different places. And I mean, I spend a lot of time here just hanging out with the guys, talking with everybody, seeing what's going on. I learned words I didn't know. I learned terms I had no clue what they meant.
What's one word? You got to tell me.
Oh God, what was it? Okay, so this has been a while back, but I had never heard the term "say less."
Oh yeah.
Before, yeah.
Okay.
And at first I was a bit like, "What did you just say to me? You telling me to shut up?" No, it's just you're saying you get it, but yeah, and there's examples like that every week. So I always play with my wife. I go home and I'll say something to her, and she'll be like, "What did you say?" "Oh no, that's what the young guys are saying now. This means this." So I feel like an old man doing it, but it's fun. But yeah, the energy here is good, and I really enjoy coming in. So I don't want to see this business go away as I get older. I'd like to still be able to come in here and play around and teach what I know and watch guys grow and find out new things. So ultimately, I'd like this business to be around for another 20 years if everything works out. I just won't be the guy handling the books and doing everything else.
Yeah.
I'll make the appearances, I'll tune some cars, and I'll come in and hang out, and in my old age, and everybody will, they'll humor me and everything else like that. But I know where life is going, and I'd like to continue here doing it. And so we'll try and make that work. I've got a lot of good guys working for me, and so I hope there'll be a way for them to continue things on and grow it. But you know what? Even if I go to a shop 1 or 2 days a week and tune a couple cars at someplace else, it's still going to be fun to do.
Right. Yeah. Some more traveling maybe on the horizon.
A little bit. Yeah. Especially if I can take my wife with me. Yeah. So let's go to Hawaii again. Let's tune some cars out there.
Well, there's some guys that I know that like go tuning in like Qatar and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, I don't know about that. So I've got some customers that are from there. In fact, I don't know if you saw the C6 ZR1 up there. He's from Kuwait.
Okay.
So, but
military base guy or?
No, he's local.
Oh, okay. He's local.
Yeah,
okay.
So, but it's obviously some money being here. But I've heard too many horror stories about, when you get there, the person that invited you over has to be responsible for your passport.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm probably too old for that at this point too. But there's enough business in California and the rest of the country that for somebody who's just looking to keep their hands in the game and keep their knowledge up, tune a few cars a week, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing too. It's like, if you're getting $1,000 for a tune, you tune a couple cars a week, you're still making pretty good money if there's no overhead. A place like this, between payroll, rent, everything else, you're talking about many tens of thousands of dollars a month just to break even. So you got to tune a lot of cars.
Right.
Obviously it's nice having a place to keep my extra cars, have race cars, have lifts, have access to all the equipment. But yeah, it's like there's always opportunities. And, one of the things we talk about too with the new guys is, you might need to think about different ways to make money going forward, because I don't think someone today could get into the tuning business and be prepared for retirement in 25 years just tuning cars anymore. I think it's too different. I think the regulatory environment is too different.
How much is it going to change in 25 years?
Exactly. And with electric cars, I mean, yeah, some guys are finding ways to get a little bit more power out of a Tesla, but it's not like this where you've got to understand the actual combustion process and optimize things. It's about changing the current limits on, on some breakers or whatever. So tuning is going to be different. Electric cars, obviously we've seen them kind of peak and then ebb back a little bit, but they will continue to be a big part of the market. And older cars, race cars, whatever, vintage cars, think about that. A Honda Civic now is vintage, an EF or something like that. But there'll be markets for those, but it won't be the same as the heyday. When the first time I ever used a dyno was 1994, 95, DynoJet, right? They were just becoming popular. DynoJet changed the world when it comes to dynoing. Nowadays, everybody's got a dyno. So dynos are everywhere. It's not unique to have a dyno. But cars are better and better now. ECUs are more and more capable to the point where you can do a generic reflash and still get a lot of power. Mm-hmm. And you can charge a lot less because you're selling the same reflash to everybody. I've seen stuff on Instagram where people are offering like a B58 reflash guaranteeing 100 horsepower for $300. You go buy your own MHD license or whatever, but I'm not going to compete with that.
Right.
I don't want that market. First of all, I don't want to ship out generic flashes, but if that's all somebody wants, more power to them. Why would they come to me and spend $1,000 on a full dyno tune when they can get 80 or 90% of the gains for $300? You have to understand that's where the market's going. So, some of my guys, one of my guys is really good with 3D printing. So he's looking at doing
about 3D printing,
customized parts and like that. And in fact, this Blackwing over there, we did a full 3D printed intake for it, custom, because the intake that was on the car had horrible mass airflow performance. So I think there's a market for that going forward, and there's also, the social media side of things. I was never much about social media, but we've done a big push on Instagram the last year or so and gotten a lot more reach and engagement, and it drives business. And there's also things people like to see that can generate money, even if they're not bringing you the car, so there's all different ways of making money, but it's not the same game. And you can't just buy a dyno and be a good tuner and expect to have a 20, 25 year career and retire anymore. It's not going to be that way.
Yeah, one of the things I was just thinking about is like, because instead of selling intakes, if you sold files for the design and people could just print their own, but then that's pretty easy to get copied.
It is easy to get copied. And also 3D printing is not in the space yet where the average person can make things work. We went through a couple iterations on that one and then had to, realize that you have to do some special things to make things, when you're printing long tubes, for example, and the certain carbon-based materials or carbon fiber-based materials, you need somebody who knows what's going on. But where it will happen, I think, is, you'll be able to send a file to China right now and get stuff done. I mean, there's no point in 3D printing like metal stuff here in this country right now.
It's like a 10x cost.
Yeah, it's way too expensive. So, plastics and stuff, yeah, it's okay. But even little things like, Alberto with his STI, they did a custom 3D printed headlight duct, for the turbo, and he wants to sell those. So I think what you do is you get to combine maybe the development of a product like that, having the resources to actually test it, and then sell a proven product.
Yeah.
If you can defend your intellectual property, which these days means pretty much you get a year or two before it's already knocked off and available for half the price.
That's
elsewhere.
Pretty standard. Yeah.
Yeah. So you gotta, the first guy I ever had come across that was, OmniPower, sell map sensors, stuff like that.
I think so. Maybe.
Yeah. So Steve is the owner of OmniPower. Used to work for Skunk 2 out here. Really talented guy. Used to work on Ferraris. I mean, just the guy knows everything. I had him rebuild my S2000 motor at one point in our race car years ago. And he used to live down here, moved to Vegas, started OmniPower, and just sells sensors, right? And he has to get them made in China because otherwise they wouldn't be cost effective. But he told me, he said, yeah, whenever I release a new product, he said, within 6 to 12 months, someone's selling it for less than my cost. And so you just have to keep going and establish a brand. But that's what you have to expect to happen these days. Anything that's not locked down or you're producing yourself in your own factory. So you almost have to have a constant upgrade path to keep the copycats off your tail.
Yeah. And like patenting is only worth it to some degree, but it's like there's costs with that and there's time. And it's
not only that, when you patent something, you also put something out there that says exactly what you're selling. So it makes it easier to either find a workaround or anything else. These days, it's pretty much just time to market and establish your brand.
Yeah. I've seen like people have taken stuff off of like Amazon and TikTok Shop because they basically just have crawlers or whatever, just looking for stuff to knock off. And it's like, that's a mess.
Well, even the auto parts game right now, right? Counterfeit spark plugs.
Yeah. Right? How about that?
Yeah. Massive problem. We can't get mass airflow sensors for older GM cars now that work. We actually got I think it was a Delco or Delphi one. Map sensor or mass airflow sensor for a car on a C5 Corvette. And the guy's old mass airflow sensor failed. He got this one from Delco or Delphi, put it on his car, and it worked fine to about 45 pounds of air per minute, so about 450 horsepower. And then instead of the mass airflow curve continuing to go up, it actually started to go down. So even though the airflow was continuing, supercharged car, it was actually going lean because the airflow reading was going down. And we said, yeah, we've seen this before on several GM cars. Gen 2 CTSVs, it's a problem too. And this map sensor is no good. You got to get another one or get an OEM GM one. I can't get an OEM GM one. Okay, well, he said, let me call the company. And so he calls them up and he relayed this phone call to me. He said, yeah, I told them that the mass airflow sensor would not measure horsepower above 450 horsepower. The airflow reading would go wonky. And the sensor company told him, yes, but the car is only rated at 400 horsepower, so it's fine. He said, my car makes more than 400 horsepower. He said, the car is only rated at 400 horsepower. The sensor will read fine to 400 horsepower. Goodbye. So we had to convert it to an LS3 MAF to make it work. That's the problem now for a ton of stuff. We've seen guys get thermostats at AutoZone that get stuck. The quality of aftermarket auto parts now is horrible because all this stuff's coming out of these companies overseas that either don't understand the part or don't care, and selling it at the lowest possible price. And I mean, we had a guy with CTSV that almost blew his car up because he bought the car used. The customer the person he bought it from had replaced the mass airflow sensor. First time he got on it, the car leaned out like crazy. Fortunately, he was on E85. If he had been on 91, he would have smoked the motor, all because of a sensor. I've never had to worry about off-the-shelf sensors being a problem before.
Right.
Now we got to double check that stuff. It's like, God, what does it mean for oil pressure sensors or, coolant temp sensor or whatever else? It's like, if you can't depend upon your sensor, it's like you're screwed. And the newer the car gets, the more dependent on what you are upon the sensors. And like GM now, it's like anything older than 10 years old on GM, you have a hard time finding parts. Huh. It's almost like it's a deliberate strategy by the automakers that they don't want to support the older stuff anymore.
Yeah, just sprinkle it in there. What the heck is it called? Like bad actors or whatever? Like whatever. Like they're sprinkling them out there. Just
yeah, I'm not sure what it is. Part of it, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I almost feel
come
like
on, it's fun.
I almost feel like that, like the OEMs now are looking to transition people into new cars. So by not supporting the older cars, they force people to pick the new stuff up so on the new cars, you're not just buying the car anymore. You're also a source of of revenue after the fact, right? With all the data they're pulling off your car and selling to insurance companies or whatever else. And a lot of people don't want new cars. Like I'm not a big fan of massive touch screens in cars.
Oh, it's brutal.
I don't like it. I don't like all the nannies that are in new cars.
Also,
I don't want, lane control and everything else like that. I don't need that. Sure, if somebody wants it, great, but I don't want a car like that. So I want to keep maintaining my older cars. My Cadillac is 16 years old now. I have not been able to find a new diff from GM anymore for that car that wasn't already on the shelf 2 or 3 years ago at a dealership. And the price went from $1,700 to $3,200 over that time period for a new diff. It's to the point now where it's almost better for me to buy a Ford 8.8-inch independent rear suspension conversion kit and just put that in. It'll cost me twice as much, but then I can just rebuild it instead of having to replace it.
Right.
I cannot get the electric door popper solenoids for my car anymore. I have one left. It's in the trunk of my car, and I need to replace my driver's door one, but it's just a problem. And so you can't find these parts. It used to be manufacturers would support cars with parts for 20 years, and they don't do it anymore. And I think that's the only way they can keep driving customers to the new cars, because otherwise the new cars are too expensive, don't offer enough for what you're getting, and have way too many nannies, to deal with. And if you look at like JD Power reliability data or new car satisfaction data, you'll see that the number of issues has gone way up, right? But it's not issues with the engine, although GM's having their own issue with that, right?
Yeah, that's big right now.
Lifters, right? Or Toyota. I guess they just did another batch of recalls on the V35 engine. But they most of the problems are people don't like the way the telematics and software work. And the problem is that they're releasing cars a lot like Microsoft releases Windows. It's like, yeah, we're going to keep patching this to fix things over time. It's like the car isn't fully ready to go, but we'll just keep patching stuff. And nobody likes the Windows experience. You use it because you have to, right? Nobody wants that in their car, but that's what's happening now. So
that's a good point.
Yeah, the appeal of older cars only continues to grow, but the manufacturers don't like that because they don't make as much money.
Well, they might be under pressure too, is my guess, right?
Yeah, there's probably government pressure, and I don't know if you heard, but is it Massachusetts and New York and a couple other states now, Illinois, have talked about outright banning cars older than 2008, 2009.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, but the fact they're even talking about it.
That is, it's messed up.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
It's really messed up.
Yeah, so, like I said, most government agencies, like I appreciate why the California Air Resources Board and EPA were founded. And the air back here in the 70s was just like, you couldn't walk outside without coughing back then. I mean, it was thick, right? People with asthma could die if they had a bad smog day. So understand why they created it.
It was for good intentions, but then a lot of things are created under good intentions, and then it goes off the rails.
Right. That's because none of them have an expiration date, right? It's like
there's that too.
This organization needs to exist for 10 years, and then if it goes past 10 years, you got to renew it. It's got to be a vote to renew it at that point.
Yeah, that'd be kind of a good solution, wouldn't it?
Right. You have sunsets on laws, and there are some legislators that like passing the idea of passing sunset laws, but they did a good thing. But now, well, I don't know if you know, but like diesel trucks out here have to be smogged between 2 and 4 times a year.
Fuck, for real?
Yeah. Yeah. So like not like full on semis, although they can be called in at any time, but like if you have like an
F-350,
450, whatever, that kind
dude, good luck running a business out here with that.
And you take up to a day to get it done and it costs a bunch of money, right? And
if you're on the road, like if you're a hotshot truck or whatever, like that's a $2,000-$3,000 load.
Yeah.
At least.
It's a big deal, right? So, and the whole idea is that, they're producing too many pollutants, but it's like, how much are you really catching at that point? It's like you're trying to drive these guys out of business, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. And the idea now that, for example, if you modify your ECU in California, and when you go to do smog, they plug into your OBD2 port, and they check your ECU checksums and calibration verification numbers versus a database. If yours does not match a number for your car, it's an automatic fail. And now you have to go to the smog referee, which means a full day visit. They go over the entire car to see if you've broken any other laws. But what they're basically doing is you're guilty until proven innocent.
Right.
Right. You can make a car pass a smog test pretty effectively on the 85 and be cleaner than factory if it's on 91. But to do that, though, I have to go in and spend $20,000 to $40,000 proving that on a full emissions test, like what the manufacturers would have to do for the EPA. It stifles innovation. It defeats the whole idea of making things cleaner and better because no one's allowed to. And on top of that, you don't have to do smog for 8 years on a new car out here. So again, that push to get you into a new car, right? No smog for 8 years out here. So by that time, the car's out of its emissions warranty anyways. The first owner's probably sold it. It may have been gone through a couple owners, and they're not checking it anyway. So if you buy a new B58, S58 car and you tune it, you can go around making 750 horsepower for 8 years and no one's going to know. So you're not proving anything's cleaner at that point anyways. It's a really perverted system at this point, unfortunately. And it's been created and perpetrated by people who really don't have any knowledge about the technology involved or the outcomes. So it's almost an ideology.
Yeah.
More than anything else. But that's also California.
That is California.
Yeah. Okay. It is what it is.
All right. Well, a quick question, by the way. When's your guy come in here to do his one launch control a day?
By the time this is out, it'll probably be okay. But actually for like Sundays, he actually does 2 on Saturday. So he won't be in today.
Fair enough. Gotcha. Yeah. So does he have a particular goal with that, or just for the hell of it?
Just want to see how fast he can get the 60-foot time and whether or not it breaks.
Yeah.
He's pushing that thing as hard as he can. He's trying to show people that platform will handle a lot more than they think it will.
Interesting. And that's still a Gen 1 B58, right?
A Gen 1 B58 junkyard motor. They bought it. Someone said it had a rod knock. He took it apart and it was fine. So put it back together. Still all OEM parts. I think he's got it's a 6872 turbo on it or something like that. Maybe 6874, I forget what it was. Port injection, 3.5-inch exhaust, and MHD with and a turbodynamic transmission controller.
Okay.
And he put a stage 2 kit into the transmission, and that's it. Oh, he just upgraded the drive shafts. So he's so distraught a couple sets of drive shafts at Button Willow at the racetrack. So, or Bakersfield, I should say. So he said, I'm done with that. Okay. Last time out, he trapped almost 148 in the quarter with it, but he could not launch it without. So we did.
So he's trying to dial in that 60.
We did a bunch of roll-ins on the launch to make sure the top end was good. Then when he said, okay, I know the car's running good, let's try launching it. As soon as he did a hard launch, broke the drive shaft. So we've never gotten, I think it's got an 8-second pass in it as is right now.
That's kind of sick.
But yeah.
That's it. That's pretty cool.
So, but he's launching her hard in the driveway. So I think his best.
What kind of tire is he on?
Mickey Thompson's.
And he's just doing that right here in a parking lot?
ET Streets, yeah. So, so far I think he's at like a 155, 60 foot. He wants to get in the 1.4s in the driveway. Yeah,
that's going to help out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Last question then. At the end of every episode, I like to ask my guests to pick 3 cars. You have an unlimited budget. You could choose whatever you want, mod it however you want, and you have to pick a daily driver, a track car, and a show car.
Ooh,
what 3 are you picking?
Show car, I'm going like old Ferrari Daytona.
Okay.
I got to have that for a show car. Unlimited budget. That one's going to be a blast. They're not the greatest cars in the world to drive or whatever else, but I just love the way they look and sound. So yeah, that's my show car. For a track car,
any kind of track.
Any kind of track. Well, for me, I'm more of a road course guy. So like I have an S2000 race car. It's not here right now, but I'm more of a road course guy. I like going in corners. So it's a tough one, but I think I'm going to go with GT3 RS.
New one, 992? Yeah,
new one. I have driven a number of GT3s in the racetrack. I go over to the Porsche Experience over here in Carson whenever I can, and if I can afford the GT3, I'll do it. But I'll even take a Cayman. But my first GT3 I ever drove was a 99 1.1 over there, GT3 RS, and they actually don't let you drive the RSs anymore. But that was just a revelation in how good a chassis can be, and so. Yeah, I think I would enjoy that car. I also know it's going to hold up on the racetrack. I'll be able to drive it as much as I want and have a good time. There are faster cars out there, but for what you get, the GT3 is just awesome. And then for my daily driver has to be all-wheel drive. So
why? You're in California.
Yeah, but I want a lot of horsepower.
Okay.
So I need an all-wheel drive car so I can actually use that power when I want to. I hate spinning tires in my Cadillac. I don't have to do a burnout to get a hook. So that one I'm torn. I have not driven a ZR1 yet, but the ZR1X looks really attractive. The C8 platform is very livable for daily driving. Yeah, it's only a 2-seater, but who cares? I think I would do the ZR1X for now. There are other all-wheel drive cars out there I like, but I mean, I wouldn't have to do a thing to the ZR1X to really enjoy it.
That's a good point.
Most other all-wheel drive cars I'd buy, I'd have to make some modifications to, I think.
You wouldn't do like a single cab F-150?
No.
The Mexican GTR?
We actually looked at buying one just recently, just for a shop car, just for the fun of it. But No, I think I would enjoy the ZR1X a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Unlimited budget. Now, if you give me a budget, yeah, I'd buy
Different story. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, on that note, where can everybody find you?
Okay. So yeah, Church Auto Test at Church Auto Test on Instagram, churchautotesting.com on the web. Hit us up. You can find us on Google. Give us a call anytime. Yeah, we're always here. We're here at least 5 days a week, often 6 days a week, 10 to 6. We're usually here much later, having fun after hours too. So stop by. We've had a lot of guys just stop by and say, hey, I saw what you guys were doing, or I heard you guys were tuning. I want to see what you're like. We'll show you around. We'll give you a ride in one of our cars if you want. You know, we'll just do some donuts in the parking lot if you want, or do a launch. And just come on by. We love to meet other car enthusiasts. It's a lot of fun for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Shawn, thank you very much for making this happen. Everybody, thank you for listening, and we'll see y'all next time.